listening to the Northern Hunter Podcast, home of all things hunting, fishing, and outdoors in Alaska.
All right, everybody, welcome to this week's show. My name is James Payne.
I'm Dalton Gray.
I'm Ryan Humphreys.
And we have got Chris Perez in the studio with us again. Thank you for cutting some time out. Come hang out with us, good buddy.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, how you, anything exciting since the last time you were here happening, or?
Not really, just work and been skinning stuff.
Yeah. I was going to say, skinning the winter's kill. Well, it's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, just wanted to say thank you for, hanging in there and showing up as much as you have, honestly. It's cool that you've been willing to come on the show and talk as much as you have and share your knowledge and your information. Just wanted to... I wanted to point something out for the listeners that might not know this, how much of a trooper you are as far as hanging out with us. But there was, what was it, 2 episodes ago you were on with us? 3 maybe? It was last fall when we were telling our moose hunting story.
Oh, yeah.
I think you, Dalton, were gone guiding for that one.
I missed that one, yeah.
So if anybody's listening to this show for a while and you realize we go pretty long, pretty often, we're pretty long-winded.
Even the times that we tried to split it up Mondays and Thursdays, we would just end up with 2 3-hour shows.
Right. Well, and to that point, for anybody who thinks they're hearing a long 3-hour conversation, if you're hearing 3 hours, it was actually like a 5-hour conversation.
5 to 6.
Yeah. And there was one, I think it was that time we didn't leave the studio till about 2 a.m.
I remember that.
And it was snowing pretty good outside too. It was
cold.
Nice when we walked in here. It was snowing when we walked out.
Yeah, and so I just want, appreciate you being an absolute trooper and your willingness to help with.
I like coming to hang out with you guys. I
Practically
enjoy
one of the
myself.
family at this point.
Yeah, well,
I
like it.
Well, and we're going to talk a lot about, spring in this episode, bear season coming up. We're all getting jacked for that. Super excited. But speaking of things you're going to be helping out with us, we're very excited to announce that the Northern Hunter is putting on a official bear bait workshop for anybody interested in learning the basics, and honestly, probably more than the basics of baiting bears in Alaska. If this is your first spring up here, you've been, wanting to get into it, or it's been, you've been here for years and just, want a little bit of more extra knowledge.
Yeah.
Even if you've baited before and just want to up your game a little bit, we're doing a bear bait workshop. It's going to be, let's see, this comes out on April 1st. So this is not a joke. I'm not joking with you here. This is not April Fool's. But it's going to be on April 20th at the J.P. Jones Community Center in Fairbanks, Alaska. So this is an in-person event. And for anybody who doesn't know where the J.P. Jones Center is, it's off Rickert Street. So right in smack dab middle of Fairbanks.
Yep. You can just Google Maps the J.P. Jones Center.
Google Maps it. It's real easy to find. There's only one door to get in there.
Yep.
I've been to several events in this place. It's real nice.
Yep.
We've got a whole room booked. So pretty much however many of you want to show up. It's free admission. There's no door fees. We're going to be doing, we'll probably have like a donations thing because we're going to be doing a barbecue lunch is going to be provided. So this is going to be like an all afternoon event. And we're going to have the 3 of us here. So myself, Dalton, and Mo. We're going to be doing some speaking. Chris, you've been gracious enough to help us with this as well. So you'll be there to tell some stories and share your experience. Your friend, Carl Roberts, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So he's a very knowledgeable guy. He worked for Fish and Game for a long time, biologist, done a lot of studying with bears, and has just, he's been, studying bears longer than any of us have been hunting them. So
he's a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah. So he's going to come in and do some talking and kind of really share some of his wealth of information. I'm working on getting some other people there. It's going to be a great event. And if you've, whether you've bear baited before or never set a bear bait in your life, this will help you have the information you need. You can ask questions in person and, really get a good grip of what's going on out there in the woods. So, and really feel confident when you go out. So we're excited to bring this on. We're going to be, just absolutely stoked to put this on for you guys.
We'll
This is, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, Just to mention too, we will have some prizes to be given away.
Yes.
Possibly some little small raffle, low cost ticket items to get in and get a chance to win some of our stuff that we'll have on hand from some of our sponsors.
Yep.
Obviously, Beta 907 is probably going to be one of the headliners of the event.
Absolutely.
We'll have some Nasty Boar, no doubt. We're probably going to have to keep that out in the back of one of our trucks, though.
Well, and that's one of the benefits of this is, we'll do a whole smorgasbord of come smell these scents, and Nasty Boar will be included in that. So you've heard us talk about it. You've heard the jokes. You've heard the horror stories.
Come sniff it live.
Come sniff it live. You'll know as soon as you do why we talk about it.
I kind of heard that some of the bodybuilders in Fairbanks might be switching to that instead of smelling salts.
It'd be effective, I can tell you that.
Yeah, it'll wake you right up.
I've grabbed a whiff here and there on the way into the bait after a long drive.
Extra energy to haul in bait. Be like, all right, let me hit the Nasty Boar again.
You get that new guy out there and just say, hey, smell this.
But so we're super excited to put this on once again. April 20th at the JP Jones Community Center. It's the Northern Hunter Bear Baiting Workshop. So we're going to, what do you think, Mo? Think we'll have it up on the website by Monday when this comes out?
Yeah, hope.
Yeah. I love your confidence, buddy.
I'm planning on it. If everything goes according to plan, this will be there.
There will also be flyers all over town. Just like I said, there's no entry fee. Just let us know you're coming so we know how much food to make. That's pretty much it. But lunch is provided. There's going to be a lot of great conversation. You get to ask any questions you might want to ask. And it's going to be a good time. Yeah. So, I'm excited for it. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, you guys, you, Dalton, and Mo are going to be speaking at another event at your church. Yes. And so that's a cool thing there too. The Sportsman's Evening, is that right?
That's a Sportsman's Meeting, I suppose they're going to call it.
Like
I think that's on April 16th. I think that's the Tuesday of the week that we're going to do our bigger event on the Saturday. So if you want to come to the church event, that's not a Northern Hunter event. Mm-hmm. Mo and I are going to be speaking there. We'll have about a 40 minutes to an hour presentation. If you only have time to come to that one, that's fine. If you just want to get a taste of what we're going to do there. But if you want the full 9 yards, come on Saturday the 20th, because that's going to be the big expose.
And if you really want it all, come to both.
There you go.
Yeah, come to both.
All right, and this is kind of the next step that we're going to start doing here at the Northern Hunter. We're really big on trying to help anyone who wants to go out there and try to be successful and safe and ethical in what they're doing, and really promote education, because a lot of the issues we experience in the woods are simply from a lack of knowledge. There's not a lot of generational knowledge being passed down these days, and we're going to try and help you guys out. So
that's something that we've kind of dealt with a few people. Honestly, in state and out of state, there's been some people that they're not big fans of hunting media groups,
right?
Whether it's us or anybody else, and they don't want to grow the hunting population, and they think that it's already too crowded and we're already too restricted. The problem here is the hunting population is aging.
Yes,
and the number of new hunters that start and then quit is very high.
Yes,
especially in Alaska. It's expensive. It's time consuming. It's very logistically difficult at times to get to some of these great places to hunt.
And, unlike what people expect, there is not an animal behind every tree up here.
There's not an animal behind every tree.
This is not Yellowstone.
And it's way more difficult than you would think in Alaska to find somebody that is willing to talk to you and spend the time to teach you anything that they know.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great folks in Alaska that have great attitudes, and there are a lot of folks that do take in newer hunters under their wing. But not everybody can do that.
Right.
Not everybody wants to, but not everybody that wants to has the time to do it either. And so that's what we're trying to do here. That's the main goal of the podcast.
Yep.
And really anything that we do is hunter education and just furthering your knowledge. If you know everything that we talk about, that's great. But send somebody that might have use for our perspective, or one of our guests that we bring on, to try to learn. So.
Because it's especially important to keep the culture alive. That's the biggest point there. Keep everybody safe. If everybody knows what they're doing out there, it's going to be a lot more enjoyable for everyone.
Yeah.
And those people are going to be out there regardless, whether they know what they're doing or not.
Yep.
So it's
might
better
as well
that
be
they
doing
just
it right.
know what they're doing. Yeah.
Exactly.
It'll be safer. It'll be a better experience for everybody. And honestly, if we don't grow the community, we're going to lose our rights at some point.
Yeah.
So,
which is a great segue into our next discussion for the week.
I was hoping you'd catch that.
I was picking up what you're putting down. Washington is yet again on the train of trying to shorten this time their black bear hunting season. So I saw this today. Are you guys familiar with Howl for Wildlife?
Yeah, I've seen it.
I
think so.
An organization. I don't know how new they are necessarily.
I've
been seeing more of their stuff in the last year.
Okay.
So that it's possible that they're new in the last couple of years, but I apologize if that's not correct. But I came across them on Instagram a while ago, and I've been following them. And earlier today, they made a post on Instagram. If you want to read it, you can over at their Instagram page, howl_org. The article says, some members of the WDFW Game Commission, that's the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, are proposing that a major change needs to happen to Washington's bear season. Anti-hunting Commissioner Lorna Smith has proposed some major changes not based on the department's recommendation, that's in quotation, which would eliminate an entire month of the current season and cut the current tag allotments in half. Anyone who is a serious bear hunter in Washington knows that the season starting in September versus August 1st would likely cut the harvest of black bear nearly in half. August is typically when most hunters specifically target bears. If the season was to open on September 1st, many of berry crops would have already been burned out, resulting in far less success for bear hunters. The proposed changes are a direct attack on predator hunting and yet again another example of this current commission's end goal to eliminate hunters from the landscape. We need to take a stand now more than ever before it's too late. At this point, we're not willing to give an inch. So that's what they posted. Now, I've been able to find a few things online, but there's not a whole lot. There are a few articles that you can just Google this problem and find directly from Washington Fish and Game, basically talking about the reasons why they're opposed to it. And this anti-hunting commissioner, Lorna Smith, I think her name was, she's very openly anti-hunting. Now, last year, I believe it was, they tried to do a similar ban of some sort. I don't remember all the details, but I remember seeing things about it in recent times, them trying to shut down black bear hunting. You have to get together on this.
Didn't they shut it down completely last year?
I don't think they shut it down completely.
I don't think they successfully did, but I think they were proposing that.
Yeah.
I believe they were.
Yeah, and we're seeing some anti-hunting proposals come up in Colorado right now as well. I say that not because this is directly concerning us here in Alaska, but because we have a lot of listeners in Washington State.
Absolutely.
And you guys are known for being pretty gritty outdoorsmen. You've got that temperate rainforest in the northwestern part of the state. You guys have a reputation for being some tough dudes down there. Well, guys and gals hunting the thick timber country and really having a good hunting culture.
Yeah.
But what we're seeing in a lot of these states now is the big cities far outweigh the voice of the outlying communities that are actually on the landscape and that actually participate in hunting and fishing. Just like we saw a number of years ago in British Columbia with the banning of grizzly bear hunting, the same thing happened. People in Vancouver far outweigh the population of rural British Columbia, and that's why grizzly bear hunting got taken off the ballot.
Yeah.
Because people in Vancouver said, well, why would we want to kill grizzly bears? Why does that make sense?
They probably never even seen one.
Most of them probably haven't.
Yeah.
And I heard something really interesting on another podcast here just this week. In the early 1900s, 80% of America's population lived what we call on the landscape, like in rural America.
Yep.
And 20% lived in the metropolitan cities. By the early 2000s, that number was flip-flopped. And they estimate that within the next 20 years, they're thinking that it's going to be 90% cities and 10% rural America.
Yeah.
You know what that means, guys? That means our voice is getting smaller and smaller and smaller because the majority of people that live in the cities aren't hunters. And even if they are, they're not as outspoken of hunters as we are living out where we are.
Well, and the problem too is, a lot of these rural individuals, and I mean, I'm sure we're all guilty of it ourselves, living here. I mean, there's a big reason we live in as far north the country as we can and still, have jobs and make a living.
Yeah.
Is because we like to be left alone.
Yep.
We just like to stick to our own, do our thing, live our life.
Yep.
You live your life, I'll live mine.
Yep.
I'm not worried about you. Don't want you to be worried about me.
Yep.
But the world doesn't operate that way.
No.
And if you stick your head in the sand or in the woods and you don't pay attention to what's going on in the cities, it will affect your life and what you're able to do. You have to be vigilant, pay attention. When things like this come out with proposals, I mean, how many people do you think have never even heard of this?
Yeah.
Like,
a lot.
They're probably having whole conferences and, meetings and all this stuff behind closed doors and trying to push it as far as they can without it reaching the public.
Yeah.
Because they know.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to stand up and make a stink and be that guy.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're going to sit in your living room until you're not able to leave it.
Right.
You hear that in politics all the time, the silent majority, right?
Yeah.
You hear that especially with some of the right-wing politicians. And, whether you're Republican or Democrat or Libertarian, it doesn't matter. I'm sure you've heard the term the silent majority. And that is referring to the blue-collar, working-class American population that does just what you just said.
Yep.
They just like to live their life, go to work, hunt and fish, and be left alone. And they don't want to be involved in politics. They don't like mainstream media. So they're not seeing a lot of these issues until it's too late.
Yep.
And a lot of times these proposals and these bans come to the forefront after they've already gotten plenty of traction, politically speaking.
Yeah.
And by that time, unless you really make a stink, it's hard to stop a moving boulder in that regard.
Exactly. By the time most people hear about this and start actually fighting back, it's so far already, and it's
on this topic, there's a quote from Edmund Burke that I've loved since I learned it when I was in high school. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. That's absolutely right.
Yep. And and the funny thing is, I mean, as passionate as a lot of hunters are, the anti-hunters are every bit as passionate, if not a skosh more.
I feel like they're more
passionate.
Organized and more driven.
Yep. Yeah. I was going to say,
we're just a lot more lax and
well, we have jobs.
Well, and
we got to be to work on Monday.
Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. It's a lot of it is the organization. So many hunters, I mean, they deer hunt maybe with the guys in their immediate community. They might have a couple of guys that all go to deer camp together or all hunt bears together in the spring or all, go out and do these things together, but it's not a big community.
Right.
You're not
these antis
connected.
are driven. They're a big community.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they're connected.
Very motivated.
You've got people, anti-hunters from other states coming to rally in other states.
Definitely.
It's like they're interstate protesting and doing all this, and whatever you call that, lobbying and stuff.
Yeah. So if you live in Washington and you want to see this stopped, find out how you can make a difference. Call your local Fish and Game, get some phone numbers for local representatives.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's all available online, but talk to your local Fish and Game department, figure out if there's any kind of lobbying that you can do.
Yeah.
If you can write a letter to somebody, whether it's the commissioner or if you need to call your local representative in your government, and find a way to make your voice heard and tell everybody to do the exact same thing.
And find a community is the biggest thing. There's like for instance, I'll just call out, the Fairbanks hunters.
Yeah.
I unfortunately did an abysmal job of attending the AC meetings this last winter. I was working a lot and gone a lot and traveling. But I try to make it as much as I can. I just wasn't in town for any after the first 2 meetings. But I have been going to these meetings for the last 2, maybe 3 years, more consistently than I had this winter.
Yeah.
How many hunters do you think there are in Fairbanks?
Oh, what's our population?
I don't remember.
100,000 now, probably.
Yeah, something like that.
I would say hunters.
At least a third of that?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
25 to 30,000.
Yeah.
That's it.
You know how many people will show up at those events? Even online? 40.
Oh, really?
50, maybe on an amazing day.
Yeah.
20, 30 on average. In addition to the board members and everything like that.
Wow.
Get involved. You don't have to go to every meeting, but you can, tune in, be alert, figure out what's being talked about. They're literally there to get public opinion. They're your representatives for the hunting community.
Right now, the Board of Game is still deciding on proposals that have been that have been submitted by people like us.
And all of those proposals come from us.
Yep.
They go to the committee. The committee votes on it as your representatives for the hunting industry.
Mm-hmm.
And then they push it to the Board of Game.
Yeah.
That's the way it works. Just like politics.
Mm-hmm.
Goes from you through representatives all the way to the top.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't get involved, you can't be too upset when things don't go your way.
Yeah.
So get involved.
Yeah.
Might have wish you would have attended some of these once everything's gone.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
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 You'll be sitting there all twiddling your thumbs because you can't do anything anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not saying that's the way it's going to be in Alaska, but if we don't be careful, it will be. So anyway.
Kind of on that note, let's jump to our next thing here, just in the recent topics that I think we should cover. Just this one less so than the first one. But another example of a right taken away by good old Big Brother government. In 1972, it looks like, California banned the hunting of mountain lions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just here this last week, there was another mountain lion attack. And this one I read about on the MeatEater website. But there's a bunch of different media companies that have covered this one so far. But MeatEater did a good job of kind of telling the whole story. And I'm not going to go through and read this one in detail. It's still a recent event. This happened on March 23rd. There were two young brothers, 21 and 18 were their ages. And they were out shed hunting in Northern California. And one of them, I think this was El Dorado County. At least that's the sheriff's office that released the statement about this event. The mountain lion came out and advanced towards them. They tried to fight it off. It attacked them, even as they tried to back away and make an escape. And the mountain lion attacked one of the brothers. The other one came in to try to fight it off, punching it and grabbed it, and it rolled off and then turned its focus on him. The other one was able to make off and try to get help. And in that event, the mountain lion did kill the other brother. Killed him, and it really got to the other brother as well. Severe wounds to his face and his chest, I think it was. And he's been in the hospital since then, getting a lot of surgeries, I'm sure, getting stitched up. But his brother did pass in this event.
Man.
Since 1972, California has used hired guns to kill mountain lions. They took away the right to hunt and trap mountain lions, which, by the way, in the late 60s or early 70s, my grandfather was one of the guys that shot a mountain lion with his bow. But back when he had his archery shop down in that area. But mountain lion hunting was a common thing. That was just part of society, right? And there are still a few states left in the lower 48 where lion hunting is still legal, and mostly with hounds is a traditional way of doing it.
Yep.
But since then, they've had a boom in mountain lion population. I think now it's up around the 5,000 animal mark or somewhere around there. Mariah, if you want to fact check that really quick.
Look that up for you.
Which, and for people listening, when you have an animal like this that has such a wide range,
yes,
territorial range, there's, a big population for an animal that likes to be solitary most of the time and has a large range.
Yep.
5,000 covers quite a big area.
Yeah.
This is 4,500.
4,500. Okay.
Yeah.
But if you go back in the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, there are verified, you were going to say something?
No, you're good.
Okay. Verified mountain lion human attacks. And it gives the victim's age, victim sex, and the county in which this encounter occurred. And also if it was fatal or non-fatal. And most of them are non-fatal. I mean, probably 70% of them are non-fatal, it looks like. But it does seem that there is a rise in mountain lion confrontations across several different states, not just California. And it seems to be that these are happening in about the same vein that some of these grizzly bear attacks are happening in the lower 48 as well. When you take away the right to hunt them, they lose their fear of man.
Yeah.
And there was another article that I found that I can't seem to pull back up here. I can't seem to find where it was that I read that, but it was someone from California that was involved in Fish and Game to some capacity, and they were saying, we've seen an uptick in the aggressiveness of these lions towards humans because they don't feel like they are threatened by a human presence. And they were encouraging the state to reconsider its non-hunting policy, which we know it's California. It's not going to happen. Actually, another interesting fact is that I read that Gavin Newsom's dad, I think it was the guy that originally got the proposal to pass in the 70s to ban lion hunting. So this kind of runs in the family. So he's not going to reverse that.
Yeah.
He's not going to let that happen on his watch. But just a reminder, guys, it's shed hunting season.
Yeah.
There's an uptick in wildlife encounters every year this time, whether it's up in Alaska or in the lower 48, it is shed hunting season. And shed hunting, is probably a somewhat new term in the last decade to 15 years or so. It never used to really have much of a term. I know guys say that.
True, yeah.
It's
always been a thing, but it hasn't been.
Yeah. But it was always just you go pick up sheds, right? It didn't have a specific term. Maybe send that to Mariah, Chris. Sorry, Chris is showing me another story here to do with lions in his hometown. Anyway, but these encounters are bound to happen, whether it's with bears or mountain lions. I've seen several personal videos, either filmed on like GoPros or cell phone cameras. I guess every camera is on a cell phone now, or vice versa. But of guys out hunting.
Yeah.
Or shed hunting, and they encounter a mountain lion and they pull out their phone to film it because it's usually kind of a drawn out attack. The cat doesn't usually just appear out of nowhere, it seems.
Yeah, it follows you.
It kind of comes out and looks at you and then makes an advance. Like in this case that we just read from the two brothers in Northern California. They had a chance to try to get away or fight it off. And so there was some time, whether it's 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is leading up to the actual attack.
Yeah.
But I've seen several of these encounters where guys are able to pull a handgun and kill the mountain lion.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So make sure that you're prepared. Carry something of a deterrent. I know some guys carry bear spray.
They got cat spray.
I would just use a big old can of bear spray if I had to. But
I'm sure it would work. Cats' senses are very sensitive.
Yeah. So. But again, if you're going to if you're going to be out in the woods, whether you're hunting or shed hunting or just out for a walk in the backcountry, enjoying the spring weather, wherever you're at, make sure that you're prepared for an encounter like this.
Don't be helpless.
Yeah.
What makes humans what we are is our tools.
Yeah.
Have a tool.
Yep.
Whatever tool you like.
Separate yourself from the animals.
Out of curiosity, you said you'd found a list. Does it state easily like how many attacks there were? Like just a number? On the top of that,
I had a hard time finding just a number for California.
Okay.
Across the U.S., there was like different lists for different states, but I never found a specific number.
Kills or attacks?
Attacks in general.
50 in the last 100 years total.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not a lot.
Yeah,
that was California, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to say because I'm not finding much more without digging deeper, which I don't think we have time for right now, but.
Yeah.
In the state of Alaska, between the year 2000 and 2017, looks like there were 68 people hospitalized for injuries sustained during 66 separate bear attacks. 10 of those people died as a result of the bear attack.
Yeah.
So in almost 2 decades,
only
66 negative encounter attacks.
Yeah.
And 10 people died.
Which is
still...
It's
something to keep in mind.
Yeah, it's no small number. I mean, that might seem like, well, it's only 60-something people, but when you think about it,
that's a lot. When
that is a lot.
And 186 total mountain lion attacks in the last 100 years in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you apparently are 1,000 times more likely to be struck by lightning than attacked by a mountain lion.
Oh, really? I guess that depends how much time you spend outside. And
obviously,
it all does. Where you're spending your time outside.
So does how many times, how big of a chance you have of being struck by lightning.
But I did see an article, I think it was from Washington State, I think it was, where there was some guys mountain biking and they got attacked by a lion. I think that was just a year or two ago as well. And one of them was actually killed in that incident as well. So,
speaking of people in a heavily populated area, you've got quite a bit stories with these things too, don't you, Chris? At least people you know of, and
I know a lot of people. There's a lot of undocumented accounts when you get into these communities. A lot of people deal with this regularly. I don't know about like a whole lot, but often enough that you hear about it and it goes unreported. But it's definitely something to consider, and they're dangerous. I mean,
absolutely.
They're very aggressive where I'm from. I know that.
Yeah, because you grew up in this country, right? This area,
much further south of that. But I mean, that there's a pretty high population where I'm from there.
Yeah.
About how big are these mountain lions, Chris?
It's debatable, but they can get pretty big. Like a 2-lane highway, I've seen them take up a lane, full body. And we're not talking like big highway, but like a 2-lane highway.
8.5 feet.
Yeah. And I've seen them pushing 200 pounds in areas that they're eating well.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's not, I don't think that's normal.
Yeah.
But when you have good, that kind of goes hand in hand with, like, back home, we've got a lot of the old, the old burrows from the mining days, right? And so you have these like isolated populations of burrows that kind of have regenerated there. And those mountain lions, that's an old known food source for those guys, and they get big off those
old donkeys.
And those donkeys are big too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And these things can grow pretty big.
Are those burrows just feral then?
They are. They're just there.
Really?
That's an old mining area back there, and Big Bear Lake, California is an old mining. An old mining.
They just opened the gate and smacked them on the butt.
I think I should know more about that, but I know, like, around mom and dad's house, I mean, they're just at night, they're in people's trash. They're almost like coyotes, and coyotes take them down too.
You're talking about lions, not burrows, right?
No, burrows.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, like, and actually. You can Google it. You can look it up. There's a pretty good burrow population in the San Bernardino Mountains.
Is it a huntable population?
It's not.
No.
But you know what the crazy part about it is, because everything's so restricted. You have these things. People are hitting these things in cars.
Oh man.
And I think at one point they made efforts to relocate them. And it's like anything. These things, they're adaptable. They travel.
Yeah.
And then the other thing too, they can traverse rough country.
Yeah.
So you relocate these things. And you think there's enough geographical jam in the way, and they find a way through that. And all you need is a couple, and you've got a population again.
Wow.
And the coyotes, it's funny, you can drive around in my hometown. If you drive around, after dark on a weekday, it's a resort town. But if you drive around on a weekday, late night, you'll see bears, coyotes, bobcats, mountain lions, donkeys. Yeah. And it's just, you're like, wait a minute, I'm in California.
I mean, a tumbleweed go across the road, but wow.
Yeah, LA County is an hour away. I mean, it's just, it's a very bizarre place, but
Chris, you mentioned the mountain lion shot by a sheriff or a sheriff's deputy.
Yeah,
so it looks like it happened twice. Last year in 2010.
These people get very worked up about this.
Like, the mountain lion starts to show up around the area, and they just go hunt it down.
Yeah,
that's the impression I get. Like, as soon as they see it and they can find it, they shoot it.
But they
and then the thing is too, everyone kind of seems to be under the impression that, like, it's that funny thing when you listen to people that aren't really educated in wildlife. There's a mountain lion hanging around. Well, there's not just a mountain lion hanging around.
Well, once a mountain lion's been found to have made a kill nearby residential area, all of a sudden everybody's like, it killed a pet dog. It looks like one of them.
But you have a lot of people in opposition to this, to them being killed too. Until their dog's getting drug over a 9-foot fence by one of these things,
or their livestock or anything.
Yeah, and you don't have a lot of livestock, but you do have some small populations of people that still have farmland, like small farm land there. And then you have that. It's very sudden elevation, but the east side of the valley there in Big Bear Lake it's high desert. And so you got that sage, and that's those mountain lions really like that elevation change, that country change, right?
So probably catch deer out there,
and that's kind of where more of those populations are documented in those areas where you have that sudden change in where they can cut down. And,
interesting.
And if they're not really dispersed, because it kind of gets the more west you go in the valley, it kind of, you gain elevation and it gets a little more mountainous, but towards the east end of the valley, you start breaking off into like high desert, and they really, there's more food. You get a lot more mule deer. There's an abundance of food source for these things. And so and then they're not managed. And it, you brought that up about hired guns, managing this population. It's just another testament to how wacky California's management ideas are. Why wouldn't you sell hunting licenses and permits and let the hunters manage this population?
Make money rather than
there
spending.
was a bounty on them back in the day.
Right, that's what I mean. You could do it so much cheaper by just putting a bounty on them.
Well, there's a ton of interest in it already.
Right?
I mean, guys would do it for free if you.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
but instead they're using tax money.
Well, and this isn't an isolated incident either. I mean, I'm not going to claim I know the names. Instant recall off the top of my head, but I know I've heard several stories of other states and parts of Canada and whatnot that have areas where they have completely shut down hunting, whether it's for predator populations or even some deer species in some areas, and then they pay hired hunters to go in there. That stuff happens
with deer in the lower 48 as well, where they'll shoot deer within the city limits, and they'll have hired hunters basically to go in and do that at night. They'll do it with thermals. They'll even shoot them with a bow in some areas. And there's guys that are paid by the city or by the state to shoot animals, whether it's deer or anything else.
Which I'm sure they love
areas.
their job, but
I'm sure they do. They get to test a lot of broadheads, I'm sure.
But
got to be really good at your shot placement.
Get to use a lot of tax money too.
Exactly.
On
it
the
just
wild
makes
burrows
no sense.
thing, there's about 3,000 wild burrows roaming BLM land in California.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
That's a lot of burrows.
And they are protected under the Horse and Burrow Act.
Only in California.
I think it's a federal
Can't you
thing,
hunt them in Mexico? You can hunt wild burrows in Mexico.
I'm sure you could shoot about anything you want in Mexico.
Right. Yeah, true.
that is the wild, wild west from what I've heard. I've talked to a few guys that go down there coos deer hunting, and they're like, once you cross that border, you are in a different place. Might look like New Mexico and Arizona, but it's different.
Right.
Yeah, you got that. You got that extended magazine with the suppressor and everything on.
You got to bring some bribe money too for the law,
America.
Well, and that's the thing. So I've never had the nightmare of spending much time in California. I mean, pleasure of spending much time in California.
I've spent enough time. Actually, I've spent some time around Death Valley.
Well, so the only time I've ever been in California, I was in Fort Irwin doing combat training with the Army.
Not sure what Fort Irwin is.
Hot. Chris's reaction tells you all you need to know. Just
is that
desert.
Like down by San Diego area, or is that
I don't
farther
know
north?
exactly where it is.
I think it's out going towards like
it's out in the desert.
Yeah, it's out towards it's out in Barstow direction, I believe. Like out
I flew there, so I don't know.
They blindfolded you, spun you around in a circle, trying to light in your eyes.
Right.
You got the experience. All
right, let's just tell him he's in California.
Exactly. Exactly.
You were in Area 51.
Yeah, we got a lot of we got Mojave Greens out there too. You're familiar with Mojave Green?
Yeah.
They're to look that up, Mo.
That's
yeah.
Look at Mojave what?
Mojave Green. So you've got rattlesnakes, but you got a Mojave Green that's way more venomous.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. But I was going to say my lovely bride, she went to college in Santa Cruz.
Oh.
And I know they had enough. And again, I don't know where that is either.
It's quite a bit further north of where my hometown.
But they had quite a few. I mean, she would tell me stories about how they'd have alerts go out on their student pages and whatnot about don't go to the library. There's a lion hanging out outside, or be aware on this trail, and
there's tons
it was just
of them
that
up
common.
in that area.
Yeah, it was just that common. So there's a bunch of them there.
Most rattlesnake in the world is the Mojave.
Wow.
Yep.
Glad I didn't run into any of those.
Those out in Fort Irwin.
Probably, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I didn't see any. No, I did shake my boots out every day.
You guys probably had someone that would go out and go wrangle those things. Because I think they do that in a lot of those places.
They probably do, yeah. I had no experience with wildlife there, period, to be honest with you. No coyotes, no snakes, no nothing. It was just dead desert.
The only wildlife I ever saw in California was monstrous jackrabbits. Huge jackrabbits.
And that's how you get them like in the where I was talking about that elevation change, because you kind of just have that high desert just bump right into that mountainous terrain. Yeah. And you get those huge jackrabbits.
Dude, those things are like bigger than our red foxes, it seems like. They're huge.
I don't know about that, but they're pretty big.
Obviously, it's an exaggeration. But to an 11-year-old kid with a 22 in his hands, they were monstrous. I mean, that was about as big game as I'd ever seen.
I know I've seen the ones in Arizona, and they're pretty monstrous.
Yeah,
I know when we were kids, we used to go shoot them with a 22. We'd shoot the jackrabbits and we'd pile them up, and then we'd watch coyotes eat them. And then, but we never had enough wherewithal to shoot the coyotes.
Well, they were disposing of your rabbits for you, so
yeah,
they had a purpose.
The burros might eat them.
No, those burros, man, they get in trash. And have you ever seen footage of? So those burros can get very aggressive.
I've heard they're pretty mean.
They will kill coyotes.
Yeah.
So in agricultural areas, that's a thing to have a guard donkey.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They'll run the coyotes.
And they're really they're really social. You know, when we were kids, we would make bets. We go up and smack them, and do weird stuff to see.
Tipping.
And it's those things will buck and they'll kick you.
Yeah.
And I remember one time we had a buddy. I don't want to get too into it, but he was going up. He was going to go smack one, and we were a ways away. And I picked up a rock and I threw a rock at this thing, a little tiny pebble, just enough to startle it, and it started bucking, and it almost took my buddy out.
Oh no,
that's funny.
The things we do.
Oh boy.
Well, let's.
Mom and Dad, they'd always be like, "Leave those things alone." And my mom, she's a big animal lover. She'd be like, "I better not catch you messing with those donkeys."
Well, that falls within the protection thing. Yeah, you're allowed to smack them around a little bit. You just can't. Doesn't say you can't in the law. So
limitations. We talk about that a lot on here.
You know what was incredible though? You would catch, I remember in middle school, the school bus would come get us, and middle school was all the way on the other side of town. And, you'd see those packs of donkeys and you'd see coyotes running in the morning and stuff. But I remember one time we were riding the school bus, and there was 7 coyotes taking this donkey down right in the middle of the boulevard.
Oh, no kidding.
It was just incredible. And
wow.
You'd hear it at night and stuff. It's common enough.
Wow.
Because those are a big food source for those coyotes, and those coyotes grow big and husky from everything eats well because everything's so undermanaged.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then you get Mother Nature steps in, and she throws her parvo and her rabies and all her secret blend at everything, because we're not
trying to kill it all off.
That's it.
So,
got to balance it out
Predator
somehow.
caller, you ever called coyotes with a burrow scream?
No, I haven't.
Might be something to try.
I don't know.
Maybe the ones in Alaska will be like, my cousin told me about this sound.
I got an email about this one.
Heard it's good eating.
Didn't think anything of it.
I got a woof message about this.
A woof.
Oh. Did you catch that?
I did.
Yeah.
I listened to the show.
Yeah. I'm
Poor Mo.
I can't believe all you guys got that one. Yeah. I got a woof.
It's wolf. Come on, get it
right. All right, let's take a quick break here.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
So we're officially in spring now, April 1st. So I don't know when spring actually officially starts, but for Alaska, it's usually actually later than this, but this is a really nice
People
one.
say April showers. It's more like April snow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, dude. So for anybody not in Alaska, we've had an unusually warm spring so far.
Yeah,
it's been really beautiful. We had the fake spring, and then it got cold again, and now
then we had
maybe
fake
in
spring 2.0,
second fake spring. Yeah, so
mild winter,
and then it got. I think we're on winter 3 right now.
Yeah,
third winter.
yeah.
It started snowing.
I don't know what it's called, but it's not spring.
I
yet.
walked outside like. The funniest thing, so my wife and I were just talking about how, oh man, it's so nice. It's only wood on the front porch right now. Like it's not, walked outside this morning, almost, ate it on the stairs. Like,
super slippery snow this morning.
About some of these Fairbanks drivers real quick, or non-Fairbanks drivers that are driving right now. I was on my way to work this morning, and on the highway between the overpasses, there's a car. Woman drivers, right? Am I right?
No. Wow.
And she's turned backwards in the left lane, just sitting there in the lane. Nothing else is wrong. No collision, nothing. I mean, her car was, but she was like, she spun out and was scared to death and was just sitting there letting everybody move over to the right lane and clogging up the highway.
I would rather her sit there and than try to do anything drastic.
She could have literally turned her tires and she had the whole left lane to herself.
So you got to think about this. And this is one thing that took me years to figure out. In Alaska, it is always somebody's first winter.
Yeah, I know.
In Fairbanks, it is always somebody's first time driving in snow. We have so much turnover from military and students here that every year, because I used to wonder that. I'm like, how do these people not know how to drive in the winter?
You know what else you got to consider?
But it's always somebody's first year. So they may have come from Alabama and never seen snow before. So,
I always tell my wife that, when she first got here, she's like, what is up with all the diversity in driving styles? And I told her, I said, there's 50 different driving styles happening here at one time. Yeah. She was like, what do you mean? And I said, everybody's driving style from every state.
Yeah.
Military, whatever. You've got, contract work.
You got guys that come up for construction projects and things from the lower 48.
Like all so many different driving
oil
styles.
Workers. There's oil workers that live in the lower 48 and fly up here for work. Like
the other day, I was driving down Geist Road, and there was somebody driving my way. There's that median there, like right by the post office area.
Oh yeah.
They were driving down. So on the right hand lane, there's 2 lanes going towards Fairbanks, and then 2 lanes going out towards like Chena Ridge and Justice Store right there.
Right, yeah.
There was a little turn lane there that goes to one of the high schools that goes towards that little center median. There was somebody driving the wrong way through the turn lane on my side of the road and then whipped out in front of me and went into the right side somewhere.
Yeah.
I saw him coming like, that car seems to be too far out of their lane, and they were on the side of the median.
So I had a similar situation. I was leaving Sportsman's 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I was on that when you're leaving Merhar.
Yeah.
And there's the 3 lanes on the right leaving, and then the 1 lane coming in off of the highway. And I almost got in a head-on collision with somebody that turned into the wrong side of the median.
Oh,
because I was all the way up against the median heading out, so the far left lane of the 3 exiting lanes.
Yep.
And this guy just turns in when the arrow's green, and he's waving his arms at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, median right there. And his wife's yelling at him. And he turns around.
Good grief.
It was funny. I was laughing, but
he's probably a typical guy. The rest of us can't admit he was wrong.
Yeah, right. But understanding that it is every winter is somebody's first winter. Has given me a lot of patience and grace with the drive. I still have road rage. Don't get me wrong, but like it's
I was just so irritated by that this morning. I was like, drive out of everybody's way, at least.
You know what? But if you're not in a good mindset to make a safe decision, it's better to just stay still.
Yeah, I get it. Hey, remember old Cliffhanger?
Oh yeah.
You're probably thinking about that already. Oh yeah.
Yep. Sure.
So, you guys getting all re-energized with this amount of sunlight we're getting lately? You feeling it
was a few days ago.
The summer, right? Yeah, until it started snowing again.
You know what? But by the afternoon today, the sun was back out, and all the snow from this morning was gone.
That's true.
It's not a big deal.
I'm just complaining for complaining's sake at this point.
It's not.
It was slickered and deer guts on a doorknob this morning.
Oh, yeah. What I'm saying is the sun was actually out 2 or 3 days ago. It's been cloudy the last several days,
but it's been warm.
It's been warmer.
So
just hasn't had that warming sun effect feeling.
But you know what
I've realized?
That means not everybody's going to be flooded in their crawl space this year.
That's true.
What I've realized
maybe
is So, the winter, there's the saying that Alaskans sleep in the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I have adamantly noticed the changeover for me. I've been going home and I'm walking 5 to 7 miles a night, getting ready for what's coming, trying to get, prepped up and
make sure under vehicles,
make sure the old joints are oiled up and because it's about to get real.
I can finally walk outside with a pack on now.
Yeah. Yep. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm enjoying spring.
I started trying to get in shape the other day. I was like, man, I got the dad bod thing going on. Time to boot camp here. So I'm like starting to watching what I'm consuming and exercising every morning because I'm like, this is the only way to make this easier. This is about to get real rough.
No thanks, honey. 90 One days. Plate of dinner will do.
Yeah. Once bear season kicks off, it's tough.
I'm always in the best shape come July 1st, and then it just starts dwindling, and then I get to September 1st, and I'm like, gosh, I've just got just lazy.
Do I really want to carry a moose?
I'm like, I should have just stuck to this. I was doing so good.
Well, and for me, that whole Alaskan sleep in the winter thing, that is so true for me. I'll literally sleep as much as I want in the winter early. As long as I'm not working, we're all really busy too, but in between the busy times, you're able to just lay down and sleep because it's dark all the time.
Yeah.
Summertime, man, I'm lucky if I get 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like it's
already as soon as it warmed up last week before, as soon as it hit that 30-40 degree mark.
Yeah.
I got home, I ate dinner, and then I'm back outside working on stuff, rolling around under trucks. Like
the air finally doesn't hurt your
fixing all the stuff. Well, it's funny is because
I don't have to wear Kinko gloves to change the oil in your truck.
Like 3 weeks ago, it was warmed up to 10 degrees. And I went outside. I was like, hey, it's 10 degrees. I'm going to work on the truck. And I was out there for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And then it dropped back down. And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to wait for it to actually warm up.
My neighbors must just think I'm nuts. I had the other day, I had my neighbor. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, can you come plow all the hard pack out? He's like, what are you trying to do? Your driveway's pretty clear, man. If you wait, this stuff will probably just melt. And I said, yeah, I want to get to my boat. So I got bear bait barrels out in the driveway and the boat's out in the driveway. The neighbors are probably just like, what is this guy doing?
Just get excited.
It's still way too cold to be thinking about this.
Well, I think, Chris, you and I have one of those things that the teenagers call a streak going on right now of days consecutively texting about bear baiting.
Yeah, it's pretty unhealthy.
Right.
I think yesterday you sent me a text. Hi, my name's Chris. I'm addicted to bear baiting.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris.
It's a real thing. It really is.
Yeah, if you can't tell, we're all pretty keyed up for bear baiting.
I just got in, sat down in the studio, pulled up my email, and saw that a whole bunch of stuff I ordered from our wheeler has been delivered. And I was like, man,
nice.
I could be home working on it right now.
Nice.
That for me, that's part of my springtime bear baiting is working on the wheeler.
Oh, I got my wheeler running.
That.
Did you?
I did.
Very nice.
I changed out the battery, fired right up.
Perfect. Yeah.
That'll do it.
Which, you've been running that same battery for 3 years now?
Well, so it's an original battery since 2016 when the wheeler was brand new, but I've had that machine for 4 years myself.
Okay. Yeah.
But last year, there was an issue at the end of the fall. Someone was pressure washing it, and I think water got in somewhere that it shouldn't have, and I ended up not having any time after I got home in October. Everything was frozen. I didn't put it in the garage and work on it all through the winter. So I went and got a new battery, got new oil, everything, and checked it out, and there was some water that was kind of spitting out the exhaust, and it was puffing a little bit of white smoke, but the oil looked fine. There was no water in the oil at all, so nothing, no harm, no foul. It just needed a new battery because it had been killed in the fall in the effort of trying to start it after the washing process.
Right.
So
yeah.
Anyway, I put a new battery in there. It didn't even turn over. It just immediately, fired right up.
Nice.
I think
put
every
about
2 seasons is a good idea to change those batteries out.
Yeah. Well, I got one of the new solid state AGM batteries. It's an interstate. And
I've heard good stuff about those.
It's a good battery.
I have one in mind.
Well, and that's the thing was, especially if you store it outside, you don't have a warm shop to store it in or anything like that over the winter. These machines getting froze and then thawing out it's a big thing.
I put a half a bottle.
50s,
I put a half a bottle of the red heat in there, and then I put a half a bottle of that full tank injector cleaner in there, that Lucas Oil injector cleaner.
It's good stuff.
I put a half a bottle of that in there just to, just engine maintenance, and then I ran it for a couple hours.
Well, you can get condensation buildup and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
changing the batteries out, making sure you got fresh oil, all that stuff, because we rely on these wheelers to get us places that it would take a long time to get out of.
Yeah.
So
if you have to turn around and walk out of a breakdown, you're in for a long walk.
Ask Mo about
Well, even that spot where I shot my wolf with you a number of years ago. Can you imagine having to walk out of there with all your gear?
Next day.
Well, yeah,
easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one would have been a nightmare.
That's a long walk.
I've ever
and a lot of up and downhill.
7 or 8 miles. 7 or 8 miles.
7 or 8 miles.
Walk out across
they had to walk
Muskegon swamp.
Oh, yeah. You were out in the swamp.
Wheeler died.
Yep.
Bought a new battery after that.
I would have rather walked out of that spot than the spot that James and I were wolf hunting.
I mean, that spot was rough.
Yeah. It was 20-something miles, and it was all straight up and down hills.
Every bit of it.
Just terrible.
And where it wasn't straight up and down hills, it was as swampy as it could possibly get.
Yeah.
I mean, there were 50 different trails through these flat spots just because you couldn't run over each other's tire tracks.
There was no main trail.
My wheeler this year, put the key in it, turned it on, hit the starter, fired right up.
Yeah, there's a first time for everything.
Well, that happens every spring. It does that. It's the condition it's in at the end of the summer.
I blew a snow machine up one winter checking my trap line, and I walked out all night.
Oh,
wow. And ended up right at the end where I was starting to get pretty questionable on things. I mean, I was starting to really get cold and really starting to wonder. Man,
you just need to pull an old outdoor boys trick and dig yourself a snow cave.
I had a gal pick me up with her dog team.
Oh wow.
Wow.
And I was glad she stopped. She looked a little reluctant. And she put me in that sled. And she's like, "Where'd you come from?" And I told her, and she goes, "Are you serious?" And I said, "I broke down last night."
Oh my.
And I said, "I am so happy to see you." She goes, "I'm going to put you in here. I'm going to get you back to the highway. Don't do nothing screwy." I said, "I'm so out of energy. I couldn't do anything. I just want to go home." But I blew my machine up. I was checking traps.
Wow.
I went on a late check, got off work, ran from the house, went out and blew that machine up. And I was a ways out.
And that's a whole different thing. I mean, at least in the springtime.
I don't want to get too into where, but you guys know where this is. And I'm like, oh, this is super accessible. This is a great place to run a line. No. And it would have been better to do that like in the morning on a weekend.
You can ride farther on a sled in a couple hours than you can walk.
It was 33 below, and it was
wow.
And
You're lucky you have all your toes still.
I was very happy to see her.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
She got me back down to the highway and then got me pretty close to home. And by then I had warmed up. I said, "All right." I said, "This is good." She goes, "You sure?" I said, I can get home from here.
Yeah.
And I haven't broken down on anything yet.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
No kidding.
There's a lot of preparation in that.
Yeah.
It's learned the hard way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what it takes once.
And there was nobody where I was, and it was very eye opening.
Mm-hmm.
It was that new, that just that young and dumb, and I'm fine, and I'm going to do this. I'm an Alaskan now. You know?
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing with that
you were
area,
after that walk.
That area you and I were hunting.
Yeah.
Is that wheeler I was riding back then.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It kept having that overheating issue, and it would just shut down on me.
Oh.
And
he would climb a hill behind me, get to the top, and that fan was just,
yeah.
Pull the thermostat.
Full blown.
It was just like steaming and like overheating the whole time. And so we'd have to sit there and wait for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then, all right, start it back up, see if we can climb the next one without it dying on you. And it was bad. I didn't think he'd make it out of there.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised.
No, it was I didn't think I was going to either. I thought I was going to go out riding side saddle with one of you guys.
Like, all right, well, let's daisy chain this thing and we'll tow it out all together.
Exactly.
Let's see if that side by side will pull you.
Yeah, I got the King Quad now, and King Quad don't care.
Life is
go,
good.
go.
Yeah. I had a buddy. It's been about 11 years now. He went to cross a shallow creek and got swept in, and that wheeler rolled over and did all kinds of stuff. And
oh boy,
I'll have to tell the story sometime, but it was wild. We almost lost him.
Yeah, I know the story.
Boy. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, that's intense.
I mean, it was one of the most eye-opening, terrifying, and we were fine. We looked for him all day, and we had put several layers on throughout the day. That's how cold it was. Late season moose hunting, and he had left with a hoodie, a t-shirt under that, a pistol, jeans, and Danner boots.
So he's in a lot of trouble.
And that was the only thing I could keep thinking. I'm like, man, if I'm this cold and I haven't had this kind of exposure. I mean, I thought I was pretty sure we were in for the worst, but it was pretty wild.
So speaking of beginner mistakes,
right?
Anyway,
this kind of leads us into our first point.
Yeah. So with it being bear bait season, if anybody's curious, one, definitely attend the in-person thing if you're in Fairbanks, our bear baiting workshop. But if you want to listen, we did a whole bear baiting series last year where we kind of went through A to Z, our style. And that's kind of the beauty with bear baiting is there's so many different styles. There's so many different barrel configurations you can do, so many different scents you can use. And everybody kind of has their thing that they attribute to their success that works for them, and it's their style and it's the way they do things. Whether you don't believe in tree stands because bears can see you, or you don't believe in certain scents because they're just too used to this scent and every bear knows this scent, or whatever it might be for you. Everybody has their style. We went through a lot of our style and what's helped us in the past, and so go listen to those. I think we labeled them really easily, bear baiting intro or bear baiting something.
We had like
1, 2, 3, 4
or whatever.
Yeah, so go listen to those. But today, we can talk about some things we didn't touch on in there, which is beginner mistakes.
And some more of the stories aspect of it.
Exactly. First things first, don't register your bait too late. And don't go set up a bait and then register it.
And don't go set up a bait and forget to put your registration permit on the site.
Right. For anybody that's not aware, you can register your bait up to 15 days before opener of season, which is April 15th. Meaning today, you can go register your bait. So if you know where you're going to go and you already have your site picked out and you're ready, do yourself a favor, go register it ahead of time. Have that registration handy. Print off 5 of them because sure enough, one of them's going to get eaten and the second one's probably going to get eaten. But what I found works pretty good is if you just keep them in a plastic, one of those sheet protectors, and just what I've come to do is I'll normally put it under a ratchet strap at my stand tree, and that's worked pretty good for me. I haven't because then if they do tear it up, they only tear off like the bottom corner or something like that. Like if a trooper walks up and checks your station, he can still get to it. But I haven't had one rip it completely off since I started doing that.
So
I try to get them away from scent. And it's just, I don't know what the exact wording is, but in that general vicinity, basic is how it's supposed to be presented. But don't lure that tree. Kind of sort of like I treat those bait station permits like I treat cameras. I put them up scent free. And bears are curious, so they generally tend to anything that's out of place. They're like, "Oh, I want to chew on this or tear this down." But like our bait, we did pretty good. We threw that thing up scent free, and you know what's weird? I don't have problems with. I've never had bears take cameras. I've never had them. Well, I have had them rip those permits down, but once I started doing everything scent free, I never have bears mess with cameras. I hear this. And I think maybe I've just gotten lucky. I was missing a latch on the door last year, but I was like...
So, what's funny is I've lost more, or I shouldn't say I've lost more cameras. I've had more cameras damaged by squirrels than I have bears.
Really?
Yeah, they will chew on the cameras. And I've got so many videos, because many of mine I set to video. 10-second video, and there's just a squirrel tail just waving in front of the camera, and then I come back and it's all chewed up. They've chewed through my my strap that goes around the tree. They've chewed the housing of the camera.
I've never had that happen.
Really? Yeah, I've had more squirrel attacks on my camera than bear attacks.
Have you noticed that you're like on top of a squirrel den?
I mean, everywhere where there's always squirrel dens.
I feel like there's always a squirrel den next to the bait site.
Yeah. But it's funny you brought that up, Chris, because that was going to be my first point as a beginner mistake, is not keeping track of your scent as you apply it, not keeping track, doing things prior to touching your scent. And this goes not only at setup, but all through the season.
Cross-contamination.
Yep. So like you'd said, not putting scent on the tree where your camera is or your permit is a big thing, because you want to keep them distracted away from those trees.
Yeah.
But making sure you have gloves on and making sure before you ever pull any scent out of any, I'm just going to dumb this down as best I can. Don't even touch the bottles. Don't touch the cans.
Nope.
When you go in there and you've got your cameras in a separate bag and your scents in a different bag, don't even touch the outside of the spray bottles.
Yeah.
Before you set your cameras up. And the same thing when you come in to check the cameras and pull the SD cards.
Yeah.
Because the second you get any scent on your hands or your gloves and you go to close that camera housing or you go to pull that card,
you just set a stopwatch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a good way to get rid of cameras you don't like.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of how far it's going to take it into the woods.
I had a camera or two eaten or slapped.
I've had them slapped.
Yeah. A lot of times they'll just smack them and, you get there and the front half of the camera's hanging by a wire or something.
Yeah. I like it when you check your camera and it's just a nose and maybe an eye.
That's cool.
Or you get the eye, yeah. But I've never had them rip down permits, which I'm sure it's going to happen at some point. But the thing that I've always, permit usually is the first thing you put up.
Yeah.
Right. Sure. And I put it up usually a little distance from the bait.
Sure.
I've talked to troopers about that.
Yep.
And they're fine with it being a little away from the bait as long as it's on your trail in.
Right.
And that, that helps keep it away from the bears. I put it up on a tree. I'll stand up on my wheeler, get it up to where it's still visible, but it's a little up on the tree.
Well, that's the ticket. Is it has to be visible to the trooper.
Another thing that you can do legally is transfer that information onto another piece of material.
Yes.
So I have buddies that have that. Actually, I have a buddy that has that burnt into a piece of 1-inch plywood.
No kidding.
Yep, because that's legal as long as all that information's posted and it's
that's genius.
It doesn't need to be on that piece of paper as long as it's on something.
I took a piece of sheet metal from the shop for the company I worked for one time and just bent it a little bit, threw the tag, folded up in a piece of in a plastic bag, stuffed it in a slot I made, wrote bear bait, and then permit with an arrow.
Yeah.
Right, and stuck that up on a tree.
Yep.
And that, because you can use the excuse, or whatever that, a bear ripped it down.
But it's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse.
Yeah.
Because while most of the time, if that is the case, especially if they find it ripped up, they're like, hey, we understand this probably happened. But, and that's why you said, print more than one. Go home, take some copies.
And when you go to check your bait,
or take a picture of it.
Always have a spare with you.
Because you may be there on Thursday. The trooper may check it on Friday. But then when he calls you on Sunday, because that's for whatever reason, that's when they usually call Sunday afternoon. I had one trooper.
I heard that story.
But anyway, it doesn't matter if the bear ripped it down right after you left.
Yeah.
While most of the troopers are going to give you a pass.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
No, it is your responsibility.
They're pretty
to
good about
that
if
permit.
you have remnants of that permit on the ground.
They are.
The troopers are pretty aware of what bear bait permits look like. They encounter it enough.
This is what I've started doing, and it seems to work pretty well. Is I take the permit, I put it in a I keep it completely folded in half, put it in like a gallon, nice big heavy duty gallon freezer bag.
That's what I do.
Take orange duct tape and I duct tape it to a tree like that, just displayed to where it can be seen. And if it really it needs to be accessed, it can be. But usually you don't need to access it. Right?
Yeah.
You got to, if you've got a buddy hunting with you, he needs to write his permit, his license and number and out on it or whatever. But,
yep.
Anyhow, that's what I've done. And, it's flat against a tree. It's orange, but, usually that's not an issue. And, but that way the trooper's going to see it. Anybody's going to see it when they're driving up. Because also in the law, that's not actually not usually enforced unless it's near a populous area, but you are supposed to have a sign saying bear bait. Like it on a prominently displayed. That's what it says on your permit regular. That's what it says on there. Not just that you throw the permit up where a trooper can find it, but they actually want it displayed prominently that there is a bear bait. As more of a warning for other people.
With the permit, or you have to have a separate sign from the permit.
Not necessarily that you have to have a separate sign.
Okay,
but they like to see that.
Yeah,
and he even said they have guys that have like big neon signs custom made. And they stick the permit in with next to that.
Because I've typically, the way I set up my trails, and we talked about this in the episode last time, is I always pass my tree stand before I get into the actual station, right? Is like my entry point is at my stand tree. And so I've always displayed it at my stand tree kind of as that, first point of entry. Like, okay, this is officially where the bait station starts.
Yeah.
And I knew that you were supposed to display it like that. I hadn't heard the thing about a different sign. But But that's interesting. Sometimes, and it's changed depending on where I've baited. I have put up signs before, especially if I'm in a pressured area.
Oh, me for sure.
Because I mean, there is the aspect that typically you don't want somebody to know you're in there because of the if somebody might come snooping around or looking to see, there are, unfortunately, accounts of poaching in this state where people will hunt off of somebody else's stand and whatnot. It's been a thing. I think there were a couple stories of that happening last season. But if you're in a pressured area too, and you expect the people in that area to be respectful, you almost want to put a sign out so that they know you're there, and they're not going to set up right next to you, 200 yards down the road because they didn't see your trail in and they didn't know you ever go there. So
yeah, I like to put a sign not right off my trail, right? But at times, if I'm in an area where I know other people are, even if people are just in there joyriding all weekend,
right?
I like to put a sign. So if they start to run down my trail, like, oh, where's this go? They say, oh, bear bait. And most people who aren't bear baiters aren't going to, they're going to stop and turn around. They don't want nothing to do with that.
So here in ADF&G, to register a bait station, you must be 18 years old, have successfully completed the ADF&G approved bear baiting clinic, provide ADF&G with a specific description of the location where you place a bait. You will be given a sign to post at your station. You may use this sign or make your own, but the sign must clearly identify the site as a bear bait station and display 1, the bear bait permit number assigned by ADF&G, and your hunting license number and hunting license numbers of others who hunt over that bait station.
Yeah.
So
you can display the permit, but what the trooper was telling me was like, well, yes, you're okay if you just throw the permit up. We really like to see that sign.
Interesting.
There's nothing.
Do they provide a sign?
No.
Well,
no.
I mean, this
is just talking about your bear bait tag.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That just 8x11 sheet of paper.
Yep. The permit.
And that's what I just, actually last year, Chris and I had our bait. We just put it up against the tree and then took plastic, just clear wrap, like
packing tape is what I use.
Just like packing tape.
Yeah.
We just wrapped the whole thing around the tree. That way it's not going to get rain in behind it. I turned you
onto that?
Yeah, you did.
Carl showed me that. Because Carl, he goes, check this out. I go, what the heck is that packing tape?
Because I used to just use a 1 gallon Ziploc and a bungee.
It's great too.
Yeah, I've done that too.
I used bungees the first year, and they kept walking off with them. So that's when I adapted to the ratchet straps.
I have one bear bait where they notoriously several times a year will tear down the sign. No matter what I do to it, they just tear it down.
The clear packing tape is great, and you can just layer that stuff too.
Yeah,
and then at the end of the season, just
at any other bait I've ever run, I've never had another bear take down a sign.
Yeah,
ever. So right here it says that if you just at the bear bait station, you have to have that permit or another sign that you make having your hunting license number, any license numbers of those hunting the bait, and a sign that says and written on that says bear bait.
Yeah.
It seems to be that if you just have the bait permit, that's fine.
Yeah, which has always been my understanding.
Yeah, right.
And to that point though, I mean, there is maybe a reason to have just the sign if they're okay with you just putting your name and your hunting license number and your permit number.
Yeah,
for the troopers' purposes of looking you up.
Yeah.
If you can there's other personal information on those permits that you might not want to have public if you're in a pressured area.
Sure.
So I mean, if that's the way you feel, and like you said, burn it into a piece of wood or something like that. That's a great idea.
The other thing too is that's a little more formal. And then what you do is you pull that down at the end of the season.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so you're not littering, leaving your stuff up.
Yeah.
And that helps people that don't understand things very well. They see something that's a little more permanent looking like that. It keeps,
that's true.
Yeah.
It's not a piece of plastic. It's not temporary.
It also makes people come up who say, oh, somebody's bait in this area.
Yeah.
When all you see is the paper permit, you're gonna come back and check that area out if you're interested and see if he's still there the next year.
Yep.
Right.
If you see a sign like that, you're not coming back.
Right? Yeah.
I think I've run across probably a half dozen different baits just coincidentally.
Oh yeah.
With plywood signs like that.
Yeah. I've seen it. I've seen the bear bait ahead signs.
Yeah.
But I've never seen it with the actual permit.
And
number
they won't chew that up generally because it's just not an interest of theirs.
What
a piece
I've
of wood.
seen a lot of is signs baiting in areas or running through areas where people have a lot of baits off of a popular trail or something. Is they'll display it maybe even right off the trail, which isn't the way I like to do it, but that's what they'll do right off the main road or trail. And it's a laminated piece of paper, 8x11, right? And it just says bear bait, permit number, and I'll see that. I mean, the different colors, whatever, but it's a piece of construction paper with that printed on it, laminated, pinned to the tree.
Yep.
Right. And you can always tell, okay, that's that guy. This guy has these 2 bait stations because it's the same color piece of paper, right?
Right.
Yeah. But,
well, cool. But so that was my first. Yeah. My first thing is watch your scent. Make sure you're keeping track of what scent is on your hand and when.
Cross contamination.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mo, what about you? Beginning mistake.
From when you were 7.
First time I was on a bear bait. Was when I was 7.
But since you started baiting on your own.
Since I started baiting
what's
on my own.
something that you do differently now that you didn't do at the beginning or that you stopped doing?
I mean, scent is a huge one on cameras and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Placing the cameras a little further away.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Not just putting them right up on top of the bait because then they see them and just want to play with them.
They don't
shiny thing.
They don't play nice either.
Yeah. I would say big thing is tree stand selection and placement. It's real easy to find a bait based on the bait location and not tree stand location. Now, when I go look for a bait, I look for a tree stand location.
Yeah.
With a bait station, placement together.
Huh.
You know, I'm kind of looking at the trees above me. All right, okay, that's a good stand tree. Now, is there a spot around I can put a bait in?
Yes.
Whereas it used to be, you know, I might kind of have my eye out for the bait station, but because, you know, try not to be silhouetted when the sun's setting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Or
being aware of which way are you downhill from the bait or uphill from the bait.
What's the pervasive wind in the area?
Prevailing
wind. There's the word I was looking for.
Pervasive.
I knew it was close. I don't know. Those are all things that, I mean, are really easy to not think about.
Yeah. Especially on your first year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
exactly.
I mean, and you know, there's all kinds of guys you'll talk to that they just go out there with really no idea what they're doing, but hey, I saw you can do this, so might as well. But keeping track of where you are in respect to the bait, your stand is huge.
We had a great one from Mr. Last guest we had on the podcast there, Mr. Clark.
Yes.
He said, you know, don't just buy a tree stand and then try to open it up at your bait site and put it together because it got to put the whole thing together.
Fresh out of the box with a crescent wrench.
Yeah. So, and there's
do
a similar
that in
one.
your living room.
I was hunting with a guy one time who literally pulled a game camera out of his backpack.
Oh, that's right.
In a package.
That's right.
And he was like, what do you mean it doesn't come with batteries and a SIM card?
Wow. I vividly remember that. Yeah.
So, you know, and it's crazy, but, you know, and we want to laugh at those people, but you know what?
Didn't you and I have an extra SIM card and batteries that
I think we made something work. Yeah. It was like, all right, well, I think I have, we were making fun of him the whole time.
Of course. Yeah.
But really, we could all make those same mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's not anything but ignorance of the fact that they don't come with all that stuff. Like, really.
The best thing to do with the game camera, especially if it's one you haven't used before, is open it up, set it up in your yard. Like, go buy your game camera now, because when you go to buy one, when you're trying to put your bait station up, there won't be any.
Yeah.
Or at least not any nice ones. And go set it up in your driveway. Figure out how much data, how the batteries run, you know, how much.
That's what I always say. Learn your gear at home. Yeah. Set mock your tree stand up in your yard.
Oh, yeah.
I've done that several times with a new tree stand setup. Mock them up.
And especially with the cameras, one reason you want to do that is to test your trigger distance.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So because a lot of what they'll say on the packaging might not be accurate for that particular camera.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure if it says 60-foot trigger distance on the camera, test it, because it's probably not going to be 60 feet.
In the dark.
Yeah.
With shadows.
Exactly.
When it's raining.
Because then you're going to set your camera up too far away. You're going to come in to check it a week or two later, and then it's not going to have any pictures on it.
Now's a great time to do that too. With some of these like low temps where we're kind of getting out of the freezing stuff, is because you'll encounter those cold temps late spring too. Generally where you're bear baiting, you're going to encounter snowy weather, some temp dips, and kind of gauge now how those electronics are going to hold up to those conditions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And most of them, what I found, and actually I've been pretty impressed. I had some cheap cameras, real cheap, just muddies, I'm pretty sure.
They work great.
And I had one set up outside my house all winter long. Same set of batteries, and it just kept running.
Yep.
It was amazing. I was so impressed.
Oh, yeah, those proof cams.
Yeah, but some manufacturers aren't that way, and you need to know that ahead of time.
You can spend a lot of money on it.
Nothing worse than walking up to a dead trail cam.
That's
all right. Yeah, all the bear bait's gone. I wonder what I've got.
Yeah.
And then no pictures.
That's another thing. More than one camera.
Yes, multiple angles.
I usually set one up for bears and one up for people.
My first ever stand, I set up 4 cameras. It was so over the top. It was so over the top,
Problem
dude.
with that is it takes so long to go to each camera before you get into the stand.
Yeah, so I had 2 looking at the barrel, one from up close and one from farther back, and I had some gauging tape on the barrel so I could figure out how tall these bears were.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had one, I was kind of along a game trail, and so I had one facing one direction, one facing the other direction. And so I could see which side they were coming in from.
Mm-hmm.
And it was cool, don't get me wrong, but way over the top. You don't need 4.
Yeah.
2 is good. 3 is, a little much, but good information. It's all good information to have. I mean, having multiple angles, because you also might run into, if the bears are just being skittish, they might come check it out, but maybe you set up out in the wide open and they're just not willing to walk out there for some reason. You need to know that, it's like, it's all information you can use to your benefit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'd say 2 is probably more than plenty.
Chris, what about you?
I don't know. That covers a lot. I think for maybe a new guy, bears they're notorious for ground deception, right? Gauging size. And something you mentioned, setting some stuff out to kind of gauge size. But what I like to do is when I start out, I did it in our bait too, is I'll take a couple big like spruce poles. I'll actually take my tape in like a small 6-foot tape, cut them at 6-foot lengths and scatter them so that you get those bears, because that's a very confusing thing. I'm still learning that at distance.
Yeah.
I'm still, I think that takes a long time to learn.
It does.
Dalton could probably
right.
offer some insight to that, but they're very deceiving size wise, and I like to scatter stuff out, couple 6.5-foot lengths of stuff here and there, and disperse them, because those bears will mosey around. Don't just put one at the barrel, and they move stuff, they pick stuff up, throw them all over the place, and that way you can get a gauge on. You're almost throwing a measuring stick on every bear that walks in there.
Phenomenal idea.
Yep, I had a guy teach me that, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, until I'm sitting there one night and I got all these bears coming out of there. I'm like, I can't tell if these things are 5 foot, 6 foot, 6 foot plus. So I said, you know what? I'm going to cut stuff. I'm going to cut a bunch of spruce poles at 6'6" on the dot.
Yep.
And if I got a bear hovering over that thing and he meets one of those things or exceeds it in length, that's a good bear.
That's a
keeper.
Phenomenal idea.
And you do more than one.
Yeah.
And they'll roll them around. Stuff gets on them. Lure gets on them. They chew them up. They disappear.
Yeah.
But
you run a little low on bait. They eat them, but they're all over the place.
It's just a little stick in the woods.
Yep.
Cut some more.
And I mean, and it really is. It works great.
That's incredible. I'd never even thought about that.
Yep.
That's a really good idea.
And you take a little tape, like one of your little, they got those little pocket tapes.
Oh yeah.
I run one of those and add a few inches to that. If you get a 6-foot tape, add a few inches of that, 6 inches or something, and then just scatter those out and put them by the tree too. Cause they're curious. So they'll walk up to the tree to kind of assess what you're doing. And that's a great time too, to actually get a high look at them and have some of that stuff scattered out. Maybe put one parallel with your trail coming into your stand or something from the bait. And if they come walking over to kind of investigate you just have different things you can reference size to.
Yeah.
And for new, or you got a little time under your belt doing it, it's very confusing to me still.
Yeah. No, that's one of the biggest aspects is people ask about is, how to gauge bears in the woods. And that's a phenomenal.
That's not bad. Yeah, I've never even thought about that.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said,
redneck ingenuity.
Don't don't spray those things down if you can avoid it. Those are just big chew toys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You see him spinning them around like a panda at the zoo.
Just doing a baton.
You come in and it's kung fu black bear.
I actually like to, and I don't know, guys. A lot of guys have different takes on this stuff, but I also like to have, and I do this. I'm doing this more often now too. I've been doing this the past few years. Is put a little something attractant closer to your stand too, because they don't just not see your stand. Everyone's like, "Oh, don't get anything on your stand. They'll come chew your trees." If they want to chew your tree stand up, they're going to chew your tree stand up.
Exactly.
You're sitting in it, leaking lure out of your backpack and that thing. They know the tree
cushion.
Yeah, there you go. Just buttering that thing up.
You don't even have to butter
too far on those long soaks, huh? Too far. But and I always like to get a little. I always like to get a little like lure, or a little pile of. I'll throw a little pile of food too, like a little closer to the tree stand, because then if you curiosity, you get them over there and you can get a little tighter evaluation on what you're looking at, and 30 yards can be deceptive versus 10 yards, 5 yards, and that you might get a bear that walks up underneath you, looks up at you, and you go, well, whatever. I'm not that excited about that.
Yeah,
guy.
and that's even you and me, Dalton. We ran one several years ago now, and that one tree we put a bunch of the Beta 907 tar on that tree up close to the stands. So it's for the same reason.
Another thing I like to do too is lure up high. So I'll actually take my tape and I'll do some when I'm setting up. I did this in mine and Dalton's bait too. I do it in all my baits now. Is get them to stand up while you're in there, because then that really gives you, and you have some definitive marks on those trees, or okay, that knot or whatever, that knot's at 6 foot. So if he stands up and he's over that,
absolutely,
and that's a gauge too. And you just put lure, put a couple different types, different scents, just to get them to stand up in front of you when they come in. And they won't always, because they're pretty habituated to what's going on in there. Chances are they've already poked around, investigated all that stuff, but you'll get a sporadic where one stands up and you, okay, cool, that's a good bear.
And one thing is putting that in a spot where your camera can catch it. Because if you end up with an identifiable bear, it's got a certain, you can recognize it when it comes in. Maybe it's got a certain rub on it, in a very specific spot, or the ears are, specific, or whatever it might be, right?
Yeah.
You look at bears long enough, you can start telling them apart from each other.
Yeah.
Just like dogs, right? If two black labs are running next to each other, you know which one's yours.
I don't know if you ever noticed this too. Like, so bears, they'll come in and they have like their favorite tree. They'll scratch their back on.
Yeah.
Right? Well, you kind of take that tree and put some markers. You throw some measurements or some kind of definitive marker to gauge that height. And if one bear scratches the back on the tree, every bear is going to come in there and scratch the back on that tree. Yeah, and that's another gun. Put your camera aimed at that, and okay, cool. We're going to sit a little longer for that guy or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've not wasted time that way too. You go, okay, well, this thing's not really fired up with anything good yet.
Exactly.
We're gonna go somewhere else so this thing kicks off, and that's good when you're starting, because that can be a bummer.
Yeah, especially if it's your first time seeing a bear in the woods, like that close. I mean, how are you supposed to know how to gauge it? I mean, and you can. The thing is, you can watch all the videos you want and listen to all the podcasts you want. Like, until you're there in person looking at them, you got to learn how to tell.
Well, and bear genetics are so different, from place to place. You have that, if his ears are far apart. And I'm sure you guys have noticed this. Sometimes bears will have real big bodies and tiny heads and giant noggins and tiny bodies. And you're like, what the heck's going on here? And so you read all this stuff, and it can be misleading, and it can be frustrating.
Yeah. And similar to anything else we shoot, whether it's caribou or moose or anything like that, you want to shoot a mature representation of the species. Like, even if you're just shooting for food. I mean, there is the aspect that you have this many tags to fill, and you're trying to fill the freezer.
Sure.
Yeah. And a bear is a bear as far as eating goes, right? And if it's the last week of season, sure, fill them tags, brother. But you want to try and pick off the mature versions. And not shoot out the younger bears and the smaller bears. Let them grow and share their genetics and pass their stuff on to the next generation of bears.
Yeah.
And then carry on from there.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing too. And so if you're new, you want to make sure you're hanging out and waiting for a good bear. It doesn't have to be a monster, but a good bear.
Right.
I
think earlier on, I got really caught up in wanting to break records, like, of my own.
Yeah.
My first bear was like 5'6", and I shot it with a recurve, and it was a nice cinnamon color phase bear.
A decent mature bear.
Yeah,
that's a nice bear.
It was an average size. And it's that one hanging up right over there. It's an average size interior black bear. It's nothing big. It's not tiny. It was an adult. Obviously it was by himself. Whatever. But the next year, I thought, well, now I want to crack 6 foot.
Right.
And then I killed a bear that was like 6'3", 6'4". And then I thought, well, now I want to shoot another with my bow, and I want to crack over 6'3", 6'4". And so I shot one that was 6'6". And then with you, James, I shot one that was just about 7 foot.
Yeah.
So now
6'10".
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
up there.
And that was, don't get me wrong, that's a huge bear.
That thing had a melon on it.
That kind of gave me perspective because I was passing up bears that were in the high 5 foot range, low 6 foot range that I had opportunities at through those years. And I kept getting a little bit more picky. There was a couple of years ago that I didn't even shoot a bear for myself because I was helping a buddy of mine try to get his first black bear before he moved out of state. And then I helped my wife get a bear with her bow. And so I didn't even shoot one for myself. I had the chance to shoot one that I kind of regret not shooting now. I have trail camera pictures of him, and he's twice the size of the bear that my wife shot. Now, he was jet black. The one that my wife shot was a color face. So, it came in, and she wasn't about to pass it up, and I don't blame her for it. It was a nice bear. But my point of that is I got to look at a lot of bears over the last number of years now that just judging them, kind of like what Chris was saying, regionally, you're going to get different characteristics. And man, I would take a contest. If I had to participate in a bear judging contest, brown bears or black bears, I'd pick brown bears every time because they're so much more magnified. Like the difference between a huge brown bear and an average brown bear, it's like 75% bigger of an animal. It's crazy how much bigger they are. It's like when you see a 75-inch bull moose compared to a 55-inch bull moose. It's not even the same animal at that point. Right. It is huge.
Well, just look at, there's all kinds of websites, and you can look at their skulls side by side.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
You could fit 3 black bear skulls inside a brown bear skull.
But then you say, well, judging black bears at a bear bait, and now you're in a compressed environment. It's really difficult to look at one bear in there at a time and say that bear is this big. When I shot that bear with you, I didn't know that bear was 6'10".
No, we just knew it was mature.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought that bear on the ground would crack, low 6+. I had no idea that he was that big.
Good point.
But the difference that I've been able to tell, the one thing that applies to any black bear judging is width. A big black bear is going to look like a hunk.
Yeah.
He has big, broad shoulders, and he looks like he could just rip that barrel right off of its chain. That's the difference between an average mature bear, albeit, 5.5 foot to 6 foot. That's a matured black bear. That's and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anybody shooting any of those. And by the way, I'm at the point now. Last year, Chris and I were baiting together. Both of us shot meat bears at that bait. I didn't care how big the bear was as long as it was an adult because I don't really care anymore. Obviously, I'm going to try to shoot the bigger bears that come in. But if all I have a chance to shoot in a season is 5.5 footers, I'm not going to go home without notching some tags.
You gauge the size of the bears for your station.
Exactly.
There's that too.
If your station, if this is the biggest boar that's coming in, and he's the king of the roost, right?
Yeah.
He's the big boy.
Yeah.
Take him out.
Yeah.
Right. But don't pick up your entire station and move it because, there's nothing big enough here.
Well, so much of judging black bears has so much more to do with, like you said, there's width.
Yeah.
And there's also, it's kind of saying the same thing, but but there's girth.
Yeah.
There's girth to every part of his body.
Yeah.
Right.
He just looks heavy.
A young black bear will look big.
Yeah.
To an unexperienced eye.
Yeah.
Because they look tall.
Yeah.
But in reality, they're shorter. They just don't have any fat on them.
I would say if their legs look long.
If their legs look long, then that's not a big bear.
Yeah. Right. He's probably just immature. He hasn't filled out yet.
Also, the ears are a good way to tell. If the ears are sticking up and looking like a dog ear, then they're going to be young. Once they're on the side of their head.
I've seen some big bears that have the young bear ear thing going on too, though.
Are they as big though, or are they small ears?
They almost have that. I've seen it where they're
they look like
satellite
Mickey Mouse
dishes.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, and then you just got this giant boar, but I think that's
maybe just changing genetics.
I think that it could be a change in genetics, and I think another thing guys do too is when they start. I've done this is you get you get set on one thing or another, kind of like what you're saying, Dalton. And and you kind of limit yourself.
Yeah.
You pass a lot of stuff up.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started getting bears, I had this, it was like 3 days before season closer. And I was just getting my butt kicked. And I had this giant boar come in. This is kind of a little off topic, but I had this giant boar come in, and he had this just monster body, monster noggin. And he was good. His haired up, but right down by the hips, he had this giant bald spot that was about 2 by 2, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't shoot that bear, right? And I'm talking to and so I didn't get a bear.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to my taxidermist. He goes, "Why didn't you shoot that thing?" I thought, "Well, I wanted to rug it out and this and that." He goes, "You could have done a shoulder mount. You could have got some meat." And I'm showing him pictures of this bear. And he was like, "You got to be kidding me. You didn't shoot that." He goes, "I could have made that thing look amazing. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah.
But being new, not really having guidance,
Sense. Yeah.
baiting by myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't limit yourself.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Having growing up, like I said, in the bear bait since I was age 7, right? Watching lots of bears. I don't know how many bears, hundreds of hours watching bears in tree stands. I'm in the tree stand, bears on the ground, but you get the idea.
Bears in tree
English
stands.
language.
I've seen videos of bears in tree stands.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about.
I would shoot them clean out of that
so
sucker.
fast.
I'd shoot them
So
clean out of
fast.
it.
Anyway, it's come down to in growing up with my dad, who's I have no idea how many bears he's killed, 30, 40.
I think your dad's at like 30 with his bow.
He's well over 30 if he is. No, he's in between there somewhere.
I'm pretty sure he's 30 or low 30s. Yeah.
Okay, he's over 30 for sure. Black bears with his bow, right?
Still a lot though.
Still a lot more.
Still a ton of bears.
Not trying to take anything away.
No. Growing up hunting with him, it's it was a little different perspective of not just looking for that monster bear. Like if the monster bear is there, you want to shoot it.
Yeah.
But it's more. I grew up learning to look for a mature bear.
Yeah.
Right. I'm looking for a mature bear because primarily you're shooting it for the food.
Yeah.
Right. And for the joy of bear hunting.
Yeah.
Right. Which is just until you've experienced it, there's
nothing like it.
Right.
Yeah.
But and so I never really had that. I've never really had the thought of passing up on a bear.
Right.
Unless it's really small. It's young. It's that lanky looking bear. And so listening to you, Chris, and James, like especially coming from that perspective of, or even what you're saying, Dalton, like always just looking for that bigger bear. Well, a few years ago I shot that 6'6", which really for an interior black bear
monster.
If I'm going to wait till I shoot one bigger than that,
you might be waiting a while.
Yeah. And just like you say, trying to judge that 6'10" versus a 6'4".
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Until they're standing side by side.
So I have a way that I look at things, and this goes for all animals that I hunt, not just bears.
Yeah.
I am not a trophy hunter. I am not a there's a lot of words you can put in front of hunter that I don't really associate with.
Yep.
I hunt
Same here.
to sustain my family with good quality meat. I'm as close to a urban subsistence hunter as you can get. That's my goal. I'm out there to get food. And it's also really fun, and I love it, and I'm obsessed with it. And I think about it night and day. But my ultimate goal.
My name's James Payne, and I'm addicted to bear hunting. Hi, James.
But
you should come to our meeting.
But the mission behind the passion, right? Everybody has a mission behind their passion.
Yeah.
And my mission is food.
Yeah.
I want that food in my freezer. And if I have a full freezer, then I'm hunting to help people around me.
Yeah.
I'm gifting it to older people, or I'm proxying for older people, or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's my passion, it's what I enjoy doing, and if they can't go out and get it their own, hey, I have extra, here's some.
Yeah.
Because of that mindset, I will look for the first mature animal that I come across, and that's the one I'm taking home. Because you never pass up on the first day what you would be thanking God for on the last day.
That's in the hunter's Bible.
Exactly. So I live by that.
Yeah.
That being said, I appreciates the big animals. So
you're not a trophy hunter, but
yeah, exactly. I have the appreciations for it. So,
but nobody's going to turn down a bigger animal if you have the opportunity.
Exactly. Right. If I'm looking at 3 bull caribou, and I'm going to go for the biggest one, obviously.
Because that's the most meat too.
Exactly. And my thing is like a 75-inch moose. I would love to have a 75-inch moose. But the way that I look at it is I'm going to go moose hunting every year.
Yeah.
The first legal moose I see, I'm going to do my best to take it home with me.
Right.
And when God decides I deserve a 75-inch moose,
that'll be the first one you see.
The first one I see will be 75 inches.
Yeah.
And that's my rule. That's my thing. And that's just the way I hunt.
You just limit yourself when you set.
Yeah.
And you know, this is like for me, especially where I come from, bears are huge.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of
your
people.
Your town is literally called Big Bear.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and you can look into some of the history of that. I mean, it's, and there's lots of bears where I'm from. And those bears are slobs. We're talking 600 plus pounds.
So you were saying
a 300-pound bear is not big where I'm from.
You were saying they don't even hibernate down there, right? They just eat all year long.
It's all growth season. These things have no hibernation. I'm not sure that they're all that way. I'm not sure if you have a sow with new cubs, if she doesn't pull a little den time under a weekend cabin or something.
Yeah.
Right. But these bears are slobs. They're just unreal. So my expectation coming into this when I started doing this is, oh, that bear's not very big. Oh, that bear. And then I'm like, none of these bears are big.
Right.
Well, you have shorter growth time here.
Yeah.
You know, very short.
Not a whole lot of fat in their diets either.
Yeah.
No.
It's starvation country.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I think guys that come from, new guys that we try to help educate and stuff and help out, I think they have these unreasonable expectations and what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And I include myself in that. It's I mean, even when you drive to like southern British Columbia and stuff, you're making your way up here, you see these slobs. Well, it's the same thing. They don't have these extreme
on the side of the road.
Tons of deer.
It's ridiculous.
Tons of deer. We don't have deer like that here.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And it's a very short time to get that caloric intake, to get that growth. And by the time they're gaining weight, they're denning up. And
first time I saw a picture of like a 500 or 600 pound bear, it was like in the back of a pickup truck on a hunting page when I first got social media as a teenager.
Thought it was fake or something.
I thought it was fake. I was like, that's not real. That can't be real. Somebody just doctored that picture.
Yeah. Black bears don't get that big.
I grew up here watching a huge black bear.
Everybody thinks
pounds,
we have huge bears here. Alaska, oh, you got huge bears. We don't.
We got huge brown bears, but
we do.
I was telling you earlier about the time when I was in Michigan hunting, and I was talking to the lady at the DNR office, and she was like, I explained to her, oh, I'm needing an out-of-state tag. I'm from Alaska. And she's like, oh, man. And I started asking her about their bears, and she's like, oh, it's probably nothing like what you guys have up there.
Yeah.
I was like, no, you'd be surprised. Like they're probably half the size of down there.
Like,
and same thing in the UP in Michigan. They get up to like 600 pounds-ish.
Like 7 foot in Cali is nothing.
Really? That's
nothing. I mean, that is like, you're getting home from the grocery store late, and you're looking, and you got your bear peepers on. And some of those sows, they gain weight to, I mean, it's unreal. Some of the specimens you see, it's
Let me ask you this. So I have heard, this is unconfirmed, but I have heard that in areas where black bears are the prevailing species and there's not very many or any grizzlies around, that they start to take on more grizzly-like behavior and being more kind of the bold, the big,
more
brawn,
aggressive.
Yeah, I'm the king of this hill kind of attitude. I've never run into a bear outside of Alaska, so I don't know how that would be. But did you notice that the behavior, like the I guess that's the good word, the behavior of these bears is different in Alaska than it is down there? Or
Carl and I had a conversation about this one time, and I've done some like personal homework on this.
Yeah.
Those bears seem to be very docile and fat and happy down there. They don't really exhibit. I remember one time my mom and I was doing something, and I was coming up the next road up from mom and dad's, and there's this sow up in this tree house, this kid's tree house with these cubs, a couple of them down low, a couple of them up high.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go get mom. I'm like, Mom, you got to see this. These bears they're down in someone's yard, But we were taking pictures. She charged me.
Oh, really?
But that's sow and cubs.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there was a fence between us and but that's one of those situations. And I was pretty far away. I was probably 60 yards away from her.
I was just going to ask, were you pushing the boundaries?
But you got to think everything's pretty like cluttered house-wise. Everything's pretty tight. So anywhere where you're going to get a glimpse, you're going to be within that range. And she was not happy.
Yeah.
I mean, she come tearing down but I feel like those bears are less aggressive
because they're well fed.
I feel like our black bears are much more aggressive. And my theory behind that is there's a lot more to contend with.
Yeah.
These black bears have probably had a run in with a grizzly or two.
Right.
Wolves have a ton to do with black bear cub mortality. And a lot of people are unaware of that.
Yeah.
You got to think, when you're used to doing all the butt kicking, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, cool. But when you're used to getting your butt kicked, you got to know how to take one to give one, right? And I think these bears, they are a different breed up here.
They've all got little man syndrome.
And I think they're traumatized from having to
right.
And
it's true.
I mean, and every grizzly bear that I've dealt with here in Alaska, once they get wind of me or they know I'm there, they're tailing.
Yeah.
Black bears, I don't know if it's their intelligence level or that they've had enough and it's a fight or flight thing. Hey, I've had to fight a bunch to survive, but they seem much more aggressive in my opinion than they're very scrappy.
Yeah.
I had a sow one year, a young sow that was chasing grizzly bears off my bait over and over again. And I went and asked some guys because I've always been under the train of thought that that's not a thing. Well, I've talked to a lot of guys that have experienced that. And I've had several photos, videos on my trail cams of tiny black bears chasing grizzlies out and grizzlies sows with cubs, which is very interesting. I mean, that's very against the rules,
the norm, right?
Yeah. But I mean, it happens.
Well, when you got to fight to survive, I guess you don't care.
And
what
you get
you're
a
fighting,
lot of crazy stuff. Like I've had moose and bait stations. I don't know if you guys have had that.
Every year,
a bunch.
I had a bait where this grizzly would come in, eat, run this moose off. He'd get his fill, kind of bail out of there, and like I think the shortest lapse we had was like 5 minutes. That moose is back in there. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? But I just think these animals are a lot hardier here.
Yeah.
They're built to fight. I mean,
Well, and they have a food source.
Yeah,
right. At a bait, they have a food source that is unlike just about anything else they know of.
And they're going to protect it.
Yeah. You talked about black bears acting like grizzly bears. The only time I've seen a black bear maybe have a grizzly bear attitude, and I think what you're talking about is when a grizzly bear walks through the woods, they walk through the woods like they are the king of the mountain.
Like they own it. Yeah.
Like they own it. And to an extent they do, right? Right? When you're sitting in a stand, you hear grizzly bear, you hear a bear coming and you hear sticks breaking and you hear something huffing. Bear. It's a grizzly.
Yep.
Yep. Unless it's that
always
biggest
like a freight
black
train.
bear on the bait.
Right.
Once in a while you'll have that big black bear.
That's
that
very
knows
true.
He's king of the mountain.
I've experienced that too, yeah.
That 7-foot black bear that walks in there.
That one that I shot with my bow with James, that one that ended up being, just under 7 foot. That one, about 10 minutes before he showed at the bait, and I could hear him. I could hear him stepping off in the woods. And I told James, I was like, I think that's a bear tiptoeing around the woods.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, crack, boom.
Yeah.
And this tree just snapped. And you could hear it just
Widowmaker
crash and just hit the ground. And I was like, whoa,
yeah.
that's a monster. And I was thinking like, man, I didn't hear any blowing and huffing like it's a grizzly bear, but it was that monster black bear. That bear that you shot, that big 6.5 foot color face one,
like 20 minutes
that thing,
beforehand.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Way up the hill, crack, boom, and both of us, here comes one.
He's letting everybody know daddy's home.
Those monster black bears have that attitude like, here I come, get out of the way.
Yep.
Well, the other thing too is I think that kind of gives them an opportunity to announce themselves to anything that's around.
Yep.
I think that's a lot of why they do it. It's a lot of posturing because they don't have that advantage of a grizzly bear.
And those bears, when those monster boars come in, they're not walking circles around the bear bait looking around.
Nope, it's right to the bait head dug in.
When you see hair, they're going straight line for that bait.
Yep.
they'll hang out of sight and look at it for a few minutes, make a crash, and then watch, and then, all right, coast is clear, here I come. And that there's not a thing in the world that's going to change.
You know, that's something else that's a good determining factor too. And it's been explained by a lot of guys that have a lot of knowledge in this, is when you have a bear come in with that kind of attitude and you're questioning what bear you should be shooting, that's the bear you should probably be shooting. The one that's posturing, like the one that owns that, it's probably as good as it's going to get.
Yeah.
And, you know, it also kind of warrants some room for some new activity. You get rid of him and he's that moody. You might start getting a little more. I've had that where baits, you just have this one boar coming in over and over, or a sow that's scrappy,
camping on it.
Yep. Like that last year, that sow, you could tell she probably had some scuffles. That one that I shot in the R bait.
Yeah.
Because she did not care that we were there.
Yeah.
She didn't, I mean, I shot her at 15 feet on the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm like, maybe she'll go away. That wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And you know,
if the big ones come in strutting like Conor McGregor, then put a bullet in them. If they have swagger, then there's a good chance. And that's something else too, is you can watch their mannerisms, not just the size. Obviously, if it's a reasonably sized bear and you're wondering, all right, is he 5'10" or is he 6'5"? And you're not experienced enough to determine that just yet, watch his mannerisms. If he walks around and kind of has to throw his back legs from side to side just to take a step, that's a big bear.
He's working.
So another one,
working back and forth.
and this is a big reason I keep my cameras, or at least one camera on video, is if you're unsure of how big this bear is, and you have to, and you're figuring out if it's a worthwhile bear to shoot, right? Or if it's the biggest one you're going to get on this bait stand, because sometimes you're just not going to get the 6'10" bear, right?
Yep.
Look at its behavior. Look at how a small bear that knows it's the small bear on the bait is going to be cautious. So it's going to put its head in the barrel and grab a bite of food and then pick its head up and look around.
And
it's going to look around and it's going to chew and it's going to finish chewing and then it's going to stick its head back in the barrel, grab another face full of food. And then it's going to pull its head back out and look around.
Because he's looking for that Conor McGregor looking to jump in.
Let's see what this is all about.
Exactly.
But no, yeah. So he's cautious.
Yeah.
And you know when they're that cautious, that's not the big bear on this bait.
He's not the dominant bear.
Exactly. And to that point, and I'll use this. I've got one more like kind of a beginner thing that I think is really going to tie into this next point that we have on the list here, is patience.
Yeah.
Having patience at the bait, especially as a beginner. One of the biggest, so in Alaska, it is legal to shoot boar or sow, but you cannot shoot a sow with cubs, and you cannot shoot the cubs that are with the sow.
Yeah.
One of the biggest reasons I've heard people have quit baiting or, struggled with baiting is because they shot a sow with cubs and they didn't know she had cubs at the time. This is the primary reason baiting has the advantage over spot and stalk hunting or other means of bear hunting. It's one of the primary reasons we do it, is to have the selectivity of the bears that we shoot. And so with that, to take advantage of that, you have to have the patience. When you're running a bait, if it's a really hot bait, bears might be coming and going pretty often. But if it's a newer bait, you're a newer baiter, you probably don't have 15 bears coming and going in a day. If you do, congratulations. But if you've got just a few bears hitting, especially a big one, they can come in there and they'll hang out for a while. Not a guarantee, but this is not a situation where you have to worry about that bear running off, because even if it does, let's just say it goes away, it's going to come back eventually. You'll either get it later that night or you'll get it the next day. And so having the patience to sit there and accurately gauge the size, like Chris was talking about earlier, actively figure out, is this boar or sow? And then if you determine it is a sow, and a mature sow, and one that you would be willing to put in your freezer, you need to watch it and make sure it doesn't have cubs. Because the sows will come into a bait sometimes 15 minutes before she allows her cubs to come in. And then next thing, after that time, and she's determined it's safe and there's no big boars that are going to be around to eat her cubs, because they do cannibalize those.
Oh yeah. Regularly.
That is a big thing. So she's not just worried about you and your tree stand. She's worried about other big boars that are hanging out around the space station. And so she'll have her cubs stashed off in a bush or up a tree somewhere. And she's going to go in and eat and make sure it's safe. And then she'll let them come down and eat as well. You don't want to get too excited. Your first year bear baiting, you get a big sow in there. You're all excited. And within a minute or two, you're pulling the trigger on her. Then you hear bawling in the bushes.
Yeah.
You don't want that to happen. One, that's an illegal bear. Two, that's on your conscience now. And some people, maybe they don't care.
They don't have one.
Yeah. But for me, that would mess with me. I've had to pass on bears because she had a cub with her.
And those are usually like first year cubs, tiny little footballs when she's putting them up somewhere and coming in solo like that. I mean, it's just a bad gig.
Well, and I had one where it probably would have been kicked the very next spring, but it was an older cub and I was out spot and stock style and I couldn't pull the trigger on her because, she had an older cub. Would that cub have survived? Sure. But it wasn't legal and it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing with baiting. There's a lot of discussion on the ethics of baiting. You get a lot, even inside the hunting community. I would say at best it's a 50-50 split.
It's very ethical though.
But it is. And that's what people don't understand about it.
And I meet guys do my line of work.
Oh, sure.
And you have that commonality. Wow, hunting, you hunt, I hunt. Oh yeah. Do you bear hunt? Yeah, bear hunt all the time. Oh yeah. Where you guys go? Oh, well, we go up here and we glass. What do you do? We bait. And you just get that. That moment of silence. I get that a lot from guys. And and I've had guys that are very, very against bear baiting. You know what? I was against bear baiting before I.
Oh, really?
Well, when I had an emotional stance on it rather than an educated stance. Absolutely.
Okay.
And a lot of things were that way for me when I came here. I didn't come from a hunting background. And
that's true.
Yeah.
Getting back to that whole gauging size thing and sows and cubs, I don't know that it gets much more ethical or sure shot than being able to sit there and watch something in a controlled environment for an extended period of time and make a judgment call on whether or not you want to harvest that animal. I don't even know how this is. I don't even know how this is
an argument.
Yeah, because people are quick to be reactive with emotion.
They are,
but it's a great means of management.
Absolutely.
You can be very selective.
Right. Which, like we talked about, I mean, you want to take the mature bears. You don't want to be shooting these little immature runarounds that are just hanging out. And before they've had a chance to pass on their genetics to the next generation.
Yeah.
Give them the chance to breed and not just leave these older bears that are probably going to die off anyway at some point.
Yeah.
And there's no, like you put it perfectly, there's no better way than to have a controlled environment where that animal is going to be there for an extended period of time for you to make that determination and take a good ethical shot.
Right. Yeah.
Dalton kind of mentioned something way back far in one of the beginning episodes that really resonated. You had talked about spot and stock and how we don't really have a lot of opportunity for that with our terrain. Things are very thick. We have a very short window before we get green out. And everything's basically like a rainforest, right?
Right.
And we don't have the opportunities like some places with open country. And, there's some places.
Yeah.
There's some special places that you can do that. But this really is the only absolute method for us to harvest bears.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's so dense around here.
Yeah.
And when it's greening up on the top of the hills, when they're out there and they're getting that early foliage, it's impossible to access that area at that point in time. By the time the top of the trail is thawed out to where you could even walk in, because you're not snowshoeing on soupy snow.
Have tried, have failed.
Yeah. So by the time you can even get in there, that season's passed.
Yeah.
And they're in the thick. So, but so that's a good thing to talk about. We'll take a break real quick and then get into that. Hammer Bullets produces what we at the Northern Hunter consider to be the most premium and best working monolithic bullets on the market today. These bullets are easy to load, extremely accurate, and best of all, they're always in stock and ready to ship. The guys at Hammer designed them so that after penetrating the hide of an animal, it sheds its petals, initiating a massive energy dump while retaining the rear shank for maximum penetration. These bullets are built with 100% focus on how they perform on game, and their proprietary designs produce great BCs with specialized pressure grooves for amazing inherent accuracy and speed. They have a minimum expansion velocity of 1,800 feet per second, which allows for long-range shots, but with no maximum velocity, making them perfect for every cartridge from your granddaddy's old 30-30 to the high-velocity round like the Weatherby 30-378 without having to worry about your bullet failing. To view their expansive selection and find the perfect match for your hunting needs, go to hammerbullets.com and use discount code TheNorthernHunter to drop the hammer on your next adventure. On bear ethics, obviously we just talked about the selection of the kinds of bears you can shoot and making sure you have the time and the patience to shoot ethical bears. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of other ethics that go into bear baiting that, if done correctly, it is a very good thing that's very good for hunters and for population control and for success.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things that you can do to kind of, let's just say, muddle the reputation of bear baiting. Yeah. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing and not taking advantage of the ways that bear baiting allows you to be ethical in your hunt, then that's where a lot of these rumors come from.
Yeah.
And so like we talked about before, a lot of stuff that happens like that is out of ignorance. It's not out of any kind of, ill intent or anything like that. Just kind of being a little bit ignorant of what can be good ethics. So figure to wrap this one up, we'll just do a round table on that. First one that comes to my mind, honestly, is outside of shot selection and making sure you're shooting good bears, make sure you're cleaning up after yourself.
Yeah.
That is a huge thing for the reputation of bear baiters. Everything we use out there comes in packaging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Whether it's dog food or
tree
stands. Yeah. All the scents and the smells comes in buckets and spray bottles, and there's just a ton of trash that you can accumulate at a bear site. And there's always that temptation that, oh man, I don't want to haul all this out. Oh man, it's so much trash. It's so much, this. Oh, the bears will just chew it up anyway. Well, that's not exactly a good thing. Yes, they will.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But, that's, when somebody comes up on a bear site, and let's just say, somebody finds your trail, walks down it, doesn't even really realize it's a bear bait trail, and ends up on your site somehow. Or a trooper comes to look at your site and do a check.
Yeah.
Whatever the case might be, and they see that place just littered in trash. You got plastic bags, you got plastic, all over the place, and things are being chewed up and just shredded, and it's just not a good look. It's not good for the bears to be eating all that plastic and stuff. I mean, good night. They'll probably, honestly, they're tough enough. They'll probably be fine.
No need to leave any of that. But there's no need to have that like that at any stage of the season.
Exactly.
You're not feeding them trash. You're feeding them food.
And the thing is, like, anytime you're bringing dog food into the bait, you're leaving with a trash bag anyways.
Yeah,
I mean, a 50-pound bag, I mean, you can stuff all kinds of trash in that thing. The other bags, any kind of buckets you may have carried in for, the big yo-yos, any kind of plastic wrappers, the small yo-yos might have come in, or, spray bottles and things like that, all just go into that empty dog food bag. You throw it on your pack frame and you haul it out of there. And that's a huge thing you can do as a starter, as a beginner, that a lot of people don't do for some reason. Mm-hmm. And it'll really make a huge difference on the experience of the bear bait and people's perspective, or how they perceive bear baiters. So, what about you, Dalton? What do you got?
Well, I think just for the legal side of it, here is, and this is something that I really appreciate about Fish and Game.
Mm-hmm.
They do a great job of explaining in proper detail what you can and can't do for bear baiting. This is on the you may do at bear baits. Okay. And this is one that guys get tripped up on. Well, at least that I've heard about from some of the wildlife troopers over time of asking questions, because that's another thing too, is you can just call the wildlife troopers and ask if you have a question that you don't think you can find the answer in the regs for, or that Fish and Game might not have an answer for, which is unlikely, but you can also call the wildlife troopers because they're going to be the ones enforcing these laws anyway.
Right.
It says you may + Place bait at only 2 bait stations at the same time. Only biodegradable materials may be used for bait. Scent lures may also be used. The skinned carcasses of fur bearers, fur animals, unclassified game, and small game, other than birds, may be used as bait. If fish or big game is used, only the head, bones, guts, and skin may be used. However, in Units 7 and 15, fish or fish parts may not be used for bear bait. So, just like what you said, just be careful. Clean up after yourself. Make sure that you're not taking trimmings of moose meat out.
Right.
You know, that there's a lot of people that, well, you know, I'm just going to take all my scraps and things like that. Technically speaking, no game.
Right.
No game meat that can be salvaged for human consumption.
Exactly.
It's not allowed. It's not worth the risk. If you have some bones that you want to, you know, cook up on the grill and get them smelling nice and good, you know, I've done that before, taking throwaway bones or things like that, and then just putting those in a stink bucket to just kind of keep that smell going, because that marrow rots over time.
Yeah,
that's a great smell at a bear bait too.
Yeah,
I've used herring oil. I've used like herring heads, you know, just bait fish heads. Herring just stinks forever.
Yeah.
I have a fresh 5-gallon bag of that right now that's going into our baits this year. Oh man, that is already rank.
I've used you can get like a red herring fish bait, like for putting on your lures.
It's called butt juice.
Depends on the brand, but yeah,
that's what you can buy at Sportsman's Warehouse in like a 1-pint bottle. It's called butt juice.
And I mean, you take a whiff of that. You just take a whiff of it with the cap on at Sportsman's. And it's like,
how is this even in the store?
Right.
Yeah. I think the biggest ethics thing for me that I've run into is guys baiting on top of you.
Yeah.
I have gone to great lengths to try to get away from people.
Yeah.
And I do it every year. And I think back to one specific situation. This was probably 6 or 7 years ago now. I was baiting. I was using a 4-wheeler, and I was unloading at the truck one day, you know, very obviously strapping up to go to the bear bait. Had a couple of bags of dog food on the back of the 4-wheeler rack, had my gun over my shoulder, or maybe it was my bow that day. I don't remember, but I was going in solo, and this fellow, you know, just comes ripping down the dirt road on a side-by-side, and it was not a utilitarian side-by-side. It was kind of like a sporty
razors or something.
It was a Can-Am Maverick.
Okay.
So like Can-Am has 3 prominent models that we'll see. We'll see the Defender, which is the most utilitarian, can haul a lot of meat, has a nice long bed option, very useful for hunting. That's probably the most popular in the hunting world. And then they have the Commander, which is a little more sporty, a little less bed space, but still some. And they have the Maverick, which there's not much room for anything in a Maverick.
Yeah, you can put a cooler in the back.
Except you. Yeah. And in that little cooler box slot, he had like 5 bags of dog food all stacked up.
Hey, it's got a low center of gravity, right?
Oh, it definitely does. And he had monstrous mutters on there, and he was ripping up the road, and he comes flying up. And it was a fella and his wife or girlfriend. Neither one of them were just for hunting. You know, they say you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I'm sorry. Guilty as charged. I judged that book by its cover. And so he pulled over and was nice enough to stop and talk because we were in the same general vicinity. I didn't know exactly where he was going, but I knew, okay, he's a neighbor. I need to just, you know, hey, here's who I am. This is the general area I am. Where are you at? Making sure we're not too tight to each other. Turns out him and his partner, wife or girlfriend, each had 2 bait permits, and they had 4 bear baits in the same area, all of them within a half mile of each other, which happened to be in a semicircle of no more than a third of a mile from my bear bait.
Huh. Good night.
When I tell you that I was frustrated, we're making a severe understatement.
Yeah.
And I let him know. I said, look, man, I have signs in the side of the trail, orange laminated signs on 4-foot sticks pounded into the ground, 3/4 of a mile from my bear bait, and then a half mile, and then a 1/4 mile saying bear bait near here, bear bait near here. And he had 4 bear baits. Now, just for folks that might be wondering, if you have 2 black bear baits or grizzly bear baits under 4 miles apart, you're sharing bears.
Yes.
100% of the time, no exceptions, no questions. You are sharing bears.
4 miles is not very far for a bear.
That is nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Trust me, I've tried it.
Yeah.
I had a bait.
What was the farthest one? I think, Mo, you had the story about that.
Yeah, we had.
It was like 80 yards apart.
Oh, that we found.
That
were
trough
close.
one. Yeah.
Right. That
Yeah.
we found
Oh,
baits close
right.
together. But baits that we have had bears transfer.
Yeah.
The same bears on the baits
It was like 9 miles.
Well, as the crow flies, I think it was 5 or 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Over
But
like
terrain-wise.
through a major creek, like
And
we're
then
talking
through a
10
major
feet
river?
wide, 10 foot.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And it was a sow with young cubs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A sow grizzly bear with 3 brand new cubs. And
Yeah.
she was going back and forth the same day
Yeah.
to both baits.
Yeah.
6 miles apart.
So when we say being in tight with each other, we're not talking 100 yards, 300 yards,
No.
1,000 yards.
This isn't whitetail hunting.
Yeah.
Those bears have a nose on them like you wouldn't believe.
There's tons of people that disagree with this too, and this is not even debatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This from a very basic
Yeah.
biology standpoint, you look this stuff up. There's tons of resource on this.
Yep.
And I've seen guys go in circles on some of these bear baiting forums
Yep.
over this,
Mhm.
and they just don't care. They're gonna pack it on top of you and call it a day, and
Bears
it just makes no sense to me.
bears have 7 times more olfactory nerve receptors in their nose than a bloodhound does,
Mhm.
which gives them 100 times greater sense of smell than a bloodhound.
Yeah.
Now, the only exception to this rule is major topography.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Rivers
Yeah.
or something.
Rivers, or specifically what I've found, because I've tried this before, just
Mhm.
in trying to experiment. All right, how far are these bears really going to go? If you have a major roadway
Right.
and a major drop off on each side, leading to different river and drainage systems going opposite ways off the road.
Correct.
If
Yeah.
you drop off the road 2 miles up and let's just say a half mile down off that hill, and then 2 miles apart down the road, you go the other side of the road to a different drainage system, those bears, at least in the handful of times that I've tried it,
Mhm.
I don't have the same bears.
Yeah.
That's the only exception I've ever seen for that.
right. But I mean, that 5-6 miles apart, that was one was in a valley and the
Yep.
other was in a separate
Yes.
drainage system
Yes.
Yeah.
across hills.
So it's not
Right.
it's not a guarantee that you won't get the same bears.
Yeah,
but
definitely it's not a guarantee.
likely.
and we weren't
less
sharing
likely.
all the bears on
No,
both baits.
no. I think it was just one or two
One or
that
two,
was
yeah.
traveling back and forth.
Yeah.
And that was specifically grizzly bears.
right.
Black bears, I have seen to be a little bit less roamy once they
Mhm.
find a great bait to stay at.
Yeah.
However, if you are in the same general area and
Same
you
valley.
have more than one bait within a 3-mile stretch and it's all the same drainage system, they're going to all the baits.
Well, and so think about it this way for anybody listening. You walk into a bait and you're pushing bears off of it.
Yep.
Right. If you're snapping sticks when you walk and you're
Hey
you know,
there, hey
a lot
bear.
of people are hey bearing their way in.
Yeah.
Some people whistle. Some
Yeah.
people go in real sneaky. But if you're new, I would recommend making some noise when you
Yeah.
walk in, just to keep yourself from getting in a
Mhm.
situation you're probably not prepared for yet.
Yeah.
But you're going to push that bear off that bait.
Yep.
In an isolated situation where you're the only bait within a 3 to 4 mile radius, that bear
He's coming back.
is going to go off into the distance.
Yep.
100, 200 yards.
You got a cool down
It's gonna
period.
cool down.
Yep.
You're going to sit down, be quiet, just kind of let everything settle. And within, let's say, an hour,
Yeah.
right, give or take, both directions. I've seen it as little as 10 minutes.
Yep.
But he'll come back.
Yep.
And you'll have an opportunity to take that
Mhm.
bear. If there are 5 baits in that area and that bear hears you coming into this one and knows you're there
Mhm.
because they're smart and they know,
He's smart. Yeah. He's been
he's just going to
trained
go
up.
to the next bait.
Yep.
Right.
And he's going to see if there's anybody over there. And if there's nobody over there, guess what? He gets a free meal.
He's going to stay there.
Yeah. And you're never going to see that bear again.
And you're just not doing yourself
And-
any service by setting up. I think a lot of new people think, well, if I go set up, oh, this is a good spot. There's guys baiting here. I've had
Mhm.
guys ask me, can I set up like 300 yards from you?
Yeah.
I just openly, I
Yeah.
mean, just absolutely oblivious to any sort
Right.
of ethics.
Mhm.
And I go, absolutely not.
Right.
I mean,
and that's the biggest thing is we're not even saying no from a selfish standpoint.
No,
we're saying no because it's not going to do you any favors to set up 300 yards away from you.
It's going to mean neither of us are going to kill bears.
Exactly. It's
I don't want to bait
that area.
I don't want to bait within 6 miles of another guy.
Exactly.
It's not worth my time.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so it's a real thing to keep in mind as a new person, not because I had this happen to me last year.
Yep.
You know, I had signs out. I had, everything notified saying, hey, I'm down here right at the tail end of a trail system. Mm-hmm. Didn't matter. Yep. Somebody threw it. It was actually kind of funny. They had a tree stand box out there that they left in the woods. And, just set up right near me.
Yeah.
And I pulled out. I was like, you know what? This isn't worth it because I know they just killed this whole area. Yeah. If there's 2 of us down here, neither of us are going to be successful.
Yeah.
And it sucks that you have to do that, right?
Yeah.
It takes so much time and so much energy to go set up and properly run a bear bait.
Yeah.
Why would you try to fudge it and then ruin it for everybody?
Yep.
So my advice is for the new guys or for the guys that are struggling and wondering, how come when I come in and I bump bears off, or if you never even see them, but you come in and you sit the prime times and you never see bears, but when you're gone, they're all over the camera.
Yep.
There's somebody else around.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so before you go setting up, go out on, first, second weekend of May. Go drive your area.
Ride every trail you can find.
What's the major holiday there?
Memorial Day.
That's my favorite recon day.
Mm-hmm.
Memorial Day.
That's a notepad with a mile marker line and a location line.
Pull out your Onyx maps and put pins on every truck you see on the side of the road or every wheeler that you see riding down your trail.
Yeah.
And figure out where all the baits are and then go a long ways away.
And here's the other thing is one fact right here is the biggest frustration on why baiters don't want more baiters in the woods.
Yeah.
Yep. It's not because there's not enough room to spread out.
And it ain't for a lack of animals either.
Exactly. Like you guys are pointing out, there are more bears in this state than almost any other animal.
Yeah.
By far.
Easily.
And so you take that fact along with the fact that there's plenty of country to spread out.
Yeah.
There's no reason we need to be on top of each other.
Yeah.
There are so many trails and so many different road systems and so many different areas. And, there's no reason for it other than ignorance. And
I would like to correct what I just said. Maybe caribou.
Yeah.
Oh, good point.
750,000 caribou in Alaska.
I don't know why I didn't think about caribou.
Okay.
So caribou, then black bears.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a correction to what I said.
But combined bears between brown bear, interior grizzly bear, and black bear, that's got to be.
Nah, it's not near 700.
No.
Oh,
no.
Okay, yeah.
But that has to be more moose. I'm sorry.
Oh, by far.
More than moose.
I think there's probably
there's
about 200,000 moose in Alaska, about 200,000 black bears in Alaska.
So just black bears. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's more bears than moose.
Yeah. But that's the thing. And they're not, don't get me wrong, there's bear areas and there's non-bear areas. Yeah. There's areas where bears are that you might not think bears are.
Right.
Especially in the interior.
Especially in the interior.
Thick, like we were talking about earlier.
Out of town.
Yeah. It's so thick, you're never going to see them.
Mm-hmm.
I can probably count on 2 hands the number of bears that I've seen cross a major highway in this state.
Yeah.
Yep. Not that many.
Denali Park.
I
don't go to Denali
I know, I'm just
Park.
saying that's where you see that because they're not hunted.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for the most part, yeah. I mean, I would say I saw 2 last spring.
Did you really?
Yeah. But I was way out. Like, I was not near any populated area.
Yeah.
But that's a huge thing. I mean, there is plenty of room to spread out, and honestly, that's the biggest frustration with new baiters is just setting up on top of people.
Yeah.
You're not doing yourself any favors, and you're not doing the bear baiting community any favors.
And you're screwing over whoever you set up by.
Yeah.
And if you go into a spot, even if you've been established there for a year or 2, but you keep seeing truck tracks in the pullout where you're at, if you ever bump into that guy, go talk to him and say, hey, how long have you been here?
Yeah.
If he's been there longer, pull out.
Yep.
The other thing too is don't set a bait on a pullout.
Yeah, right.
Because you're just opening the door of possibilities.
Somebody might drive by. Oh, there's bears here.
Yeah, I had a spot where that was very accessible. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And Carl and I were out baiting, and he goes, "Man, this is a good spot." And he goes, "But that's the problem. This is a good spot."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "And this is super accessible." last year there was 3 new guys in my immediate area. Then here's where things get interesting. I'm picking trash up out of this parking area.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's bear baiting associated trash.
Yeah. Dog
and
food
now
bags.
who is that? Who did that? There's 4 candidates here parking here every other night, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you start getting into ethics issues, encroachment stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and the guy's leaving buckets of scraps just inside the tree line, and you get a trooper out there investigating whose stuff is that.
Yeah.
And that's a hard case to fight.
Probably 3 years. Well, at least 2, maybe 3 years ago, I got a call in July about a bait. It was from a wildlife trooper, and he asked me. He said, "Hey, I noticed that you have a bait out in this area that's registered to your name. I was out in here checking for bear baits to make sure everybody's cleaned up, and I found 2 bait barrels chained together at the base of a bait tree, and 3 tree stands on the ground, all chained up to a tree, and a game camera, and a bait ball scent, big wax scent ball still hanging from the tree, and dog food all over the ground. And these bait barrels still have dog food in them. Is this your bait?" And I said, "Absolutely not."
Yeah.
And it was very easy for him to determine that it wasn't my bait once I described where I exactly was, because I had the same description as the other guy had. Turns out his description was wrong, and his description was perfect for my bait. And so the trooper called me, and I said, "No, I don't know. I didn't know anybody else was in there." Well, guess what? I'm not there anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know somebody else is around.
Yep.
And so I'm sure the other guy certainly got a call, and probably an unpleasant outcome to that.
And you know what? It really sucks.
Yeah.
When you do a lot of investigation work into a spot, you're e-scouting, you're maybe even doing drive-bys and looking around in the area preseason when it's all snowy, and you're like, man, this looks like a really good spot. You know, there's this valley and there's this water system and there's this thick tree cover and all this. And just to show up and find out somebody's been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
That sucks. I'm not going to say that doesn't suck.
Mm-hmm.
But as the newer hunter, it is your responsibility to find your spot.
Yeah.
If you find somebody else's spot, that doesn't make it your spot.
Yeah.
This is public land.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make any kind of, statements about ownership of public land.
No.
I don't like that.
No.
But public land is like the sandbox at your school.
Yeah.
Right? You can't just go stealing every kid's toy at the sandbox at school just because, it's a public sandbox, it's public toys. You're going to get in trouble.
He's there first, he had it.
You're going to get in trouble, right? It's the same thing in the woods.
That's
we all got to share it.
You don't go pee in that sandbox because you're all entitled to it. That's not how it works.
Exactly. Like we've got to share it.
All right, folks. We all know that one of the most common mishaps in hunting is damage to your rifle scope. Last year, I found the solution to that problem with the Stealthy Hunter rifle cover. It wraps around your scope and actions securely to protect it from getting knocked off of zero or even severely damaged. Stealthy Hunter also has a glassing pad and a wide variety of supplements for the outdoorsman, such as protein powder, CBD products, turmeric, and gut health supplements. They also make a lightweight trauma kit weighing in at just 14 ounces that includes everything you need and nothing you don't for all of your backcountry medical emergencies. To shop all of their equipment and supplements, go to StealthyHunter.com and enter the discount code at checkout, The Northern Hunter, to save on your order today. All Stealthy Hunter equipment is proudly made in the USA.
Chris, any ethics mishaps for new people? Any other ones, I should say? You kind of brought up that last one, I guess. So
I think that kind of covers it, really. I mean, there's it's that whole thing you just mentioned. If we can't, basically, we have to govern ourselves with a lot of this stuff. And once you start having disputes and issues, we have it set up. We have it set up to where we kind of get to govern our own hunting activity with minimal restrictions when it comes to bear baiting, and you start having issues, and it's like anything else. It's you start having problems, and someone's going to intervene, and start implementing new regulations, and it's just going to make things hard.
Exactly.
And we really don't want to be drawing more attention to ourselves.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I mean, and I wouldn't say negative attention, because I think if you have a good understanding of it, it's a positive means of, managing, and it's a good thing. But
and I think all of this kind of just revolves back to that is, just making sure when people look at bear baiting, and even from the inside, other bear baiters, they see a positive thing.
Right.
They see that in a positive light.
And you have these, like, I follow a lot of them on Facebook. You have these bear baiting pages and stuff, groups. And, there's nothing worse. You got to think there's people that hate what we do, hate our culture and our lifestyle. And they're patrolling they're infiltrating these forums. And there's nothing worse than, I called the guy out on this last year. You got 10 empty 5-gallon buckets in the background, and lids. We get wind, trash gets whipped around. And that's the kind of stuff where, that's where rights go bye-bye. You start losing privileges. And I called this guy out. I said, hey, why don't you clean your mess up? Because I don't have a problem with that at all. Calling somebody out like that in public. And
that's the thing. So
I'm not willing to forfeit my rights because somebody can't keep a bait station. And, it's like, pick up after yourself. It's a lot of stuff we've covered, but we are the ones responsible for governing ourselves. And I understand the guys that don't want to get into sharing things and having new guys get involved, and there's already too many people and whatever. But at the same time, you gotta guide. I needed guidance. All of us need guidance, and it's so we don't make these mistakes.
Right.
And this ain't whitetail hunting like you guys have said before. Where you can see your buddy in a tree stand 200 yards away.
Right. The amount of people that are going to be out there are going to be out there regardless of whether they know what they're doing or not. If they want to do it just like you'd gone out there doing it by yourself, figuring it out as you went, that's going to happen. So, like, not teaching the new guys is not helping at all, other than making sure there's guys that don't know what they're doing out in the woods.
Yeah.
To your point earlier, though, I mean, social media is a huge thing.
Well, yeah, and it's accessible.
Because not only being careful how you present your own self and your own bait on social media, but also if somebody walks into your bait, right? So it's near a public trail and somebody finds it, or something happens where somebody gets a picture of it and it's not clean and it's not looking good and it's not an ethical bait, or you're leaving trash around the pullouts, like you had mentioned. Somebody takes a picture of that and starts blasting it all over social media.
Yep, that's all it takes.
It reaches people that are anywhere in the world, and now everybody's like, oh, look what these guys are doing in Alaska, and this is so horrible. We need to put an end to this. And then you get these activists up here that are not even from Alaska, and they're protesting and trying to push for new laws. It's like, be careful how you're presenting, what you're doing out there.
Paint us in a good light. You're going to start taking, trophy pics and jump hugging your buddies and high five and make sure your site's clean. I mean, that's all there is to it. And you don't need to. I talk to a lot of people too. Well, we do a good cleanup at the end of the season. No, there's wind. We have weather. It rains. We bear bait partially in the beginning of rainy season. Well, short rainy season. Stuff gets pushed around. There's no excuse to have that kind of trash sitting in the woods. And it's, I don't know why you would want to take hard-earned time and utilize it to sit in a transfer site.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the best way to put it, right?
I mean, I'm out in the wilderness. I want to, maybe I got a barrel, maybe I got this. I want things to be clean and semi-natural, and
there's certain things you can use. I mean, you can use 55-gallon drums and barrels to hold your bait. You can use 5-gallon buckets secured up in a tree somewhere to hold stink, and a stink bucket. We've talked about those before. Things like that are okay because you're doing your best to secure that bucket, and you're doing your best to make sure that the barrel's chained to a tree. It's not going to run off into the woods. Things like that, and that is an expected foreign presence in the woods with a bait. The concept of a bait. Yeah, but dog food bags. Little spray bottles, things, just anything like that. It it really paints a bad picture.
We went and reconned a spot last year, and it was just great country. We get in there and we find a tree stand collapsed, all this stuff. And then, that's the first thing we did. We took pictures the way we found it, times and dates, 2 cell phones, so that we didn't generate a custom story, right? Mm-hmm. Taking pictures of, your phone's, my buddy's phone screen in my shot with that mess. And we ended up just packing stuff out of there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't an active bait site. It was trash everywhere. There was nothing posted.
Yeah.
And it's just a bad gig. And we burn a bunch of time loading my truck up with trash is what we ended up doing. Yeah. And it's, you can't leave that. I mean, unless you have no conscience, you can't leave stuff like that.
Exactly. Right? And honestly, especially after season, it is against the law to leave any of that out there.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you have to clean up anything you used as bait out of that area.
Yeah.
Don't you?
I think I have one more thing to add as far as the image thing. Mm-hmm. You're talking about how the public perceives bear baiting. Here's a trend, and you guys tell me if you've been seeing more and more of this or not with specifically regards to bear baiting, but somewhat across the hunting space, there's a couple of people that have killed animals with spears in more recent years. Okay. Now, there's also some, I think it's just from one particular person that did it with a blowgun. He killed a bear or two with a blowgun. Now, with any small amount of internet ability, there's a new word for you.
Yeah.
Internet ability. You can figure out who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I have a particular bone to pick with the trend that this has started. And guys thinking, I'm going to do it with a spear, or I'm going to do it with a blowgun. Tell me, please, how you are proficient enough to do that and do it right and make a quick, clean, ethical kill.
I was going to say, I don't have a problem with the spear.
Yeah.
I don't either.
If you are proficient enough.
I don't have an issue with it either.
Yeah.
But the problem is, and that there was some inside information that was exchanged between myself and another person who knew somebody who attempted the whole spear game and ended up like slicing a couple of bears in the process and not killing them.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And it was because of this particular individual's YouTube account said, I am the master predator and I will take advantage of my quarry's inferiority. And he has these whole spiels that he goes on about. Whatever. That's not my cup of tea.
That was really good.
That was actually.
It is what it is.
If they didn't know before, they know now.
Yeah, exactly. But that's my point, is everybody knows who this guy is. And like I said, it's legal, whatever. However, there are other places on this continent where spearing has now been banned for hunting because of that exact guy.
Right.
And the tasteless way that he went about doing it and talking about it and how he portrayed it in his film. There are some flat out lies about how that actually went down, how he portrayed it, and how I actually heard from one of the guides that operated the hunt. That wasn't the situation. You know, that's what got said. Here's the real problem with it, though. That being what it is, whatever. Sure. He's just doing his thing. If he's doing it legally, I don't have an issue with it. And he's good at it. He is a great shot with a bow. I'll tell you that. Yeah. He's a phenomenal archer.
He's got some good footage out there too.
Oh, yeah. And he does a good job spearing, footage. I think. You know, and he's a talented guy, but the way that it's portrayed just garners a lot of bad attention.
Yep.
When you are trying to implement a new weapon, okay? I get it.
Yeah.
I've shot bears with bows. I've shot bears with guns. I've shot bears with traditional bow, and I've shot them with a compound. I like trying different stuff. It is an absolute riot. And I have some new goals for ways that I want to do it, possibly this year if I get the chance to do it in another new way. With archery equipment, not using a spear or a blowgun. But the point here is that if you're going to try something new, you better make sure that you're good at it.
Yeah.
Don't just say, well, it's not that hard. I'm just throwing a spear and I'm going to put bait right underneath my tree stand, or I'm going to put a stand right above the bait barrel. And you just think that it's easy as throwing a baseball. It ain't that easy.
Yeah.
You got to have good equipment. You can't just buy your, I don't even know where you'd buy a spear outside of like Cold Steel or something like that. But the point is people get out there and they think, well, he did it, I can do it.
Yeah.
And while that's true, don't put yourself all over the internet and try to become the next big sensation just by doing something unique and then really portray it in a bad light for everybody else to look at and say, look at how they're doing this.
Well, and this is a problem with a lot of the modern internet day is there's a lot of people that do really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And in a 30-second to a minute long reel on the Instagrams, or YouTube or, Facebook or any of these places, you don't get the full picture.
Yeah.
You don't get the work that went into that bait, the preparation that went into setting everything up perfectly. If it went off perfectly, right? The hours and days and months of practicing with that weapon to become proficient with it. So when you got into the situation, you were able to use it in its most proficient way to ethically dispatch an animal.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, a spear will do the job perfectly.
Yeah, it might in the right hands, it'll do it better than a bullet or a broadhead.
Exactly.
They die really, really fast. That is a big hole.
But people see these videos.
Yeah.
And like you said, oh, that's cool, I want to do that. And they don't do any of the prep work. They don't. They like you said, ordered one off Cold Steel, set their barrel or their tree stand right above the barrel, and how hard can it be? Just drop the spear.
Yeah.
You gotta be proficient.
Yeah.
And the state of Alaska, they have, not to get on a whole nother tangent. I think the last time I mentioned this, we went on for 30 minutes about it. But in Alaska, you have to get certified to use a bow, right?
Yep.
And if you want to hear the whole spiel about that, it's in one of the last bear baiting episodes. But But you have to get certified to use that weapon because it takes a special amount of skill to pull it off.
I think there ought to be one for spears and blowguns.
There should be.
If it's legal, you ought to have to pass a course for it.
Yep.
You have to have hunter's ed to hunt, period. You have to have bow hunter's ed to use a bow. Why wouldn't you have to be certified?
Muzzleloader to use a muzzleloader.
You guys know this. I don't. When you do your bow cert, do you have to shoot from a tree stand?
No.
Yes, you do.
Really?
When I did it,
that's right. That's right.
There's an elevated position.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah, it's been so long. Yeah.
Well, because something that I've witnessed firsthand with guys is them, they are awesome shots on the ground. And you give it any way they get it, these guys can shoot a bow.
Yeah.
And you get them in an elevated position and everything changes. The ergonomics are different.
Yeah.
You have clutter. You've got obstructions, things to bounce those limbs off of. And you get these guys that are overly confident. We had a situation that down the road probably we'll get into about this regarding this, but where I got to see this firsthand with somebody that I know that is one of the most proficient people that I know with the bow. And I mean, I'm talking unbelievable. That just had some pretty good malfunctions. Stand. And that goes back to that whole thing. I think like in my yard, Dalton, you've talked about me getting my bow cert and getting into bow hunting and stuff. And it's something I want to do. Going kind of off top, kind of on a little tangent here, back to that setting your tree stand up in the yard and not dumping a bag of hardware and stuff. When you're setting that tree stand up, maybe do some sets up. If you've got some room in your yard to utilize that tree stand before you're going to go, shove it out in the woods, maybe set some targets up in your yard and work at that, because I know I would do that just because of my lack of confidence in my ability, right?
Yeah.
I know people who have somebody specific, but who been hunting bears for many, many years, been out of tree stands, bow hunting, wants to try the spear thing. He sets up a tree stand in his yard and it's just there for the summer.
Yeah.
Right now, kids will play in it or whatever too. It's usually not super high off the ground, right? But using it to practice with the spear, to practice with the bow, he'll do it.
Yeah.
He's been bow hunting for a long time, right?
Yeah.
A long, long time. Very, very proficient. Yet he again and again and again, he's shooting out of a tree stand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
When I was growing up learning to shoot a bow, I was proficient on the ground, but my dad said, "Hey, you're going to be hunting now. Come up on the deck." My parents have an elevated deck. Shoot off the deck. And think about where the vitals are in that animal when you're shooting, right? Because really was what it comes down to. You can shoot for the same spot on the animal that you shoot when you're horizontal as when you're at an angle. And you you hit that same spot on the outside of the animal, you're going to go right under all the vitals many times when you're in a tree.
Yeah.
Right. And they teach you all that in bow hunter's ed.
Yeah. In that bow hunter's ed class, they had you walk up a big platform and shoot off of that standing.
Yes.
So that's the reason that when you asked if they had a shoot out of a tree stand, I wasn't thinking elevated. I was thinking tree stand.
Gotcha.
That's a no. But they did have you shoot elevated. Yes. Which I almost wish they had a tree stand to shoot out of, but I'm sure the liability
and the logistics of everybody putting on the harness to climb it and everything.
That's the thing, is the liability of it and harnessing up and taking it off, on and off, different sizes, whatever. So I understand why they don't, but yes, if you're going to shoot a bow, you need to be. Well, take for instance, there's another guy in town that I don't think he's in town anymore, but he had shot a bunch of bears with archery equipment, and he was really into the whole shooting with a recurve. And he went, I think it was one bear that he made not a perfect shot on. I think it still died. It was a little bit far back or something, but he lost his confidence in shooting a trad bow on bears, went back to a compound, and he's back to just slamming them with a compound.
Yep.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah. If you feel like you lose your touch with archery equipment, even if it's with a compound and you're in a gun hunting area, go back to a rifle.
Yep.
I would rather just boringly kill bears with a gun over a bait and know that I'm going to kill them and do it cleanly than risk it if I'm not up to par and sharp on my archery.
Right. Yeah. And that's a huge thing.
Yeah. So. I've killed quite a few. I've killed a lot of bears with a bow, really. But I've killed 1, 2 with a rifle. I'm going to be hunting with a rifle this year just because I can.
Yeah.
Right. I've killed them with a bow. I know how they die when you shoot them with a bow.
It's just something fun and different to do.
I want to shoot them for one. It's my own hand loads now. It's it's hammer bullets, right, and all that kind of stuff.
Different angle.
But but it's just like there is something to doing all the work to get yourself your own load and everything. It's like this isn't a long range killer bullet, right? It could be if it needed to be.
I did the same thing last year with that 338.
20-30 yards, not. Or with a rifle, you could set up a bait for 50 yards or whatever if you want.
Sure.
If you have the shooting clearance,
right,
in the brush.
Right. But it's just, I'm going to be using a rifle just because, it's different. And, I haven't had the time to be practicing with my bow as I should to do that. And I could get it out and start doing that. And I should anyway, just so I have the opportunity. If I, when my dad says he's got a bear on his bait and it's in a bow only area, I should, and I want to go shoot it, I should be ready to do it, right?
Yeah.
But.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to add that in there really quick.
Agree.
Well, I think we've pretty well covered most things.
I think we've wrapped it up pretty good. Yeah.
I guess just out of, do you have anything to add, Mo?
I don't know if there is anything to add.
Yeah. These are just kind of running through all of the things that, people typically have to learn the hard lessons in their first several years that if you just pay attention to these details, it'll save you a lot of heartache, a lot of time. You won't lose cameras. You won't get a bad rap. You won't, get in arguments and confrontations in the woods with other hunters. You won't, it'll save you a lot.
Yeah.
And these are lessons that a lot of people struggle with their first, honestly, sometimes 3 to 5 years, trying to figure it all out. So, we're going to keep talking about stuff, telling stories, things like that. We've done a lot of the instructional, like last year we had the whole bear baiting series. This year we're going to touch on some things that maybe were missed in that series, and but also just telling stories about being at the bait. A lot can be learned just from telling stories. So that'll be a big thing coming forward in these ones. And as like we talked about in the beginning of this episode, we're really excited. We're having this bear baiting workshop that we're going to be putting on. This is an in-person event in Fairbanks, Alaska. Keep an eye out for flyers around town. They'll be hanging up. Go to the website if you want to attend this. It's on April 20th. It's going to be an all-afternoon event. Lunch is provided, and we're going to have a lot of, we'll be there. We'll have guest speakers there, industry professionals. Chris will be there. You'll get to meet him, and all of us too. If you haven't
trapper of Rat River, Chris,
mad trapper of Chena River.
But so we're
Chattanooga's better. Let's do Chattanooga. Well, I got to be careful. I got some buddies down there. I might get fired up. Or I don't trap. I'm just kidding.
Fish Creek,
right.
Bear Lake. There you go.
Well, there's like 20 bear creeks in Alaska.
Exactly.
So you can
that's
say
the
Bear
point.
Creek anywhere.
That's the point.
Bear Creek, Fish Creek, Sheep Creek.
But yeah, if you guys want to show up to that, it'll be a great event. It'll be a great way for you to learn all about baiting and ask any questions in person with industry professionals there, and all of us, and it'll be a great time.
I'm excited to go learn.
Yeah, we're super excited to put this on, and kind of gauge the interest. So let us know what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any questions about anything we talked about today, feel free to write into the show. If you go to the website, thenorthernhunter.com, we've got our contact button there. That'll get an email directly to us. We've got our social medias. If you go to search at The Northern Hunter on either Facebook or Instagram, you'll find us there. And then if you want to, help support us, 2 ways you can do that is by shopping some merch in the shop on our website, or going to our partners page, where there's a lot of great companies that have decided to sponsor what we're doing here, and most of them have provided discount codes. Those are all listed there with the links to their websites. If you would be so kind as to use that discount code when you check out, not only will it get you a discount, but it'll help us out along the way and let them know we sent you there, and help us do more programs like this bear baiting workshop. So, Chris, thank you very much for spending the evening with us. It's been a lovely, pert near 3-hour episode.
It's enjoyable as always. Thanks for having me. Good seeing you guys.
Yeah. And if you guys want to check out Chris on Instagram, it's at Apex_Alaska, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and see all the cool stuff he's up to, all the critters he's killing. So,
about to get silly.
About to get silly. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening and hanging in there. Until next time, get out there, get after it, and good luck. See you there.